NJSA 10:4, the Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this duly and regularly scheduled meeting of the Jackson Township Board of Adjustment has been published and posted in all appropriate locations.
Good. Can we have a roll call, please? Here.
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 Here. Here. We're going to go right into a private session.
Yes, so
Executive session.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, changing the agenda. Whereas the zoning board of the Township of Jackson is subject to certain requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act. And whereas the Open Public Meetings Act provides that an executive session not open to the public may be held for certain specified purposes when authorized by resolution. And whereas it is necessary for the zoning board of the Township of Jackson to discuss in a session not open to the public certain matters relating to item or items authorized by NJSA 10:4-12B and designated as follows pending litigation.
I'm going to open up a motion to go into executive session.
Move to go into executive session.
We have a motion, a second roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, we'll be back at 7:20.
Passed the planner's test and qualified as a planner. I've been before, as I indicated, provide planning and engineering testimony through many states.
All right, we accept your credentials.
Thank you, sir.
Continue with your presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, can you please orient the board to the site itself?
Sure. Up on the screen is a color rendering of the site plan that was submitted to the board. It's block 4402, lot 73. It's consisting of approximately 11.9 acres in the R3 zone. As indicated, we received a use variance on this property previously for 9 lots, 8 of which would be building lots. 1 lot would be a stormwater detention basin. Some of you may remember this property. To the north are single-family lots. To the south is wetlands. To the west are additional single-family lots, and you can see just the end of the terminus of Mary Beth Lane. Also along our eastern boundary is Frank Applegate Road. You may recall initially we had access, we were extending Mary Beth Lane into the project and having a cul-de-sac internally. That wasn't received well from the neighbors. So we agreed that we would come off of Frank Applegate Road, which we have. Also, there's some gores along that western boundary line with some of the residents, and we've agreed to relinquish all rights to any of the gores or overlaps in that area. Also, we agreed to provide 1 acre lots. There's also was a request to provide buffering along the property line with the existing residents to our north and to our west. We have a minimum of 50 foot of existing trees that will remain in those areas. We tried to basically design a site that was basically kind of set into the woods rather than just coming in and clear cutting everything. The fronts had to be cleared because we have septics on the site. So we have septics and wells being provided on the property. As I indicated, access is off of Frank Applegate Road. That is a county road. We're going through the approval process with the county currently. Sidewalks are provided on one side of the street in compliance with the residential site improvement standards, and we're providing sidewalks along the frontage of Frank Applegate Road. Sewer and water, as I indicated, will be private well and septic. The stormwater basin lot is roughly in the southwest corner of the property. That's that light green area that you see on this. That lot will be owned by the township, but will be completely maintained by the homeowner association. With regard to parking, basically each house will be compliant with the residential site improvement standards. We're showing basically assuming a 5-bedroom house here, and we're providing at least 3 parking stalls, if not more, for each one of these residences.
May I ask a question just so it doesn't get lost?
Yes, sir.
And this may be ultimately to Mr. Hill as well. Mr. Mert, you indicated the proposal is that the municipality will own the property where the stormwater is, but the HOA will maintain it?
That was my understanding what the town was looking for. If that's not the case, then
No, I think, and I think consistent with the use variance that was granted, or the prior variances that were granted, the stormwater management lot is to be owned and maintained by the homeowners association. So,
No
that's fine.
objection.
Yeah, that's fine.
No objection
Sure.
to that.
Thank you.
We do have a couple waivers that were indicated during the use variance as well. The survey is greater than a year old, and it's assumed datum. Again, it was accepted with the use variance. It's the same survey that was used for the use variance. It's just that it's taken a number of years to get to the point that we're at now. But there's been no changes on the property. It's the same survey, same property. And
you
the other way,
wouldn't have, I'm sorry, you wouldn't have an issue just updating the prior survey and submitting it, correct?
we can do that if you'd like.
Just put a revision on it.
Sure.
Okay.
The other waiver is for recreation facilities for 5 or more lots. These are 1-acre lots, which provide sufficient space for basically play sets and pools and the like in a yard. So we don't feel that a recreation facility is appropriate for this. Also, the insurance associated with play areas are relatively high, and for only a project that's only 8 lots, that would be a bit of a stretch for 8 units to assume that. Outside agency approvals, the Environmental Commission actually provided a letter today requesting the summary, talk about the barred owl habitat and the impact to that habitat. We have a valid LOI on the property. There's no wetlands on the property, but the buffer does come onto the property. There's a 150-foot buffer. So that, and in the EIS, it indicated that there'll be no impact to the barred owl. And the DEP also obviously didn't request any additional studies to be done on the site. Also, as I already indicated, there's a valid wetland LOI on the property. The fire department approved the site. County and soils were under review, and we have a letter of no interest from the MUA, as this is going to be septic and well. We do have one waiver.
Sorry, so it's not in the sewer service area?
No, it is not.
I'm clarifying that because just because it's going to, you propose it to be on septic and well, doesn't necessarily mean that there's no interest. Just clarifying that, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we got a letter of no interest from the MUA, which is what was requested to do. So that's why I stated it that way. But it is not in the sewer service area, and there's no sewer water in the near vicinity of the property. The bulk variance is subsumed with the use variance that was provided. There is one variance for the lot width for lot 73.04, which is the stormwater basin. The lot width is being provided at 122.35. The R1 requires 150, which is what we're looking to build under. The lot area is conforming. Rather than do something kind of funky with the lot lines to comply with this requirement, I think it's worth being granted the waiver. This isn't a building lot, it's a stormwater management lot, and it'll provide better linear lines coming off of the roadways, which I think meets some of the planning purposes of better planning purposes than actually providing the required width. Again, the width requirement is generally to keep houses spaced and yards spaced from each other. This is a stormwater basin lot, so we don't have that impact occurring here.
On that, Mr. Hill, what's your concern?
I'm sorry, regarding?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, from a planning perspective, there's not a difference between a building lot and a stormwater management lot in the Jackson Township Land Use Code. From a practical perspective, one might argue that you don't need a 1 acre lot to do stormwater management for 8 lots. So to that end, as opposed to creating less desirable geometric lots, the applicant's requesting relief from providing the required lot width. So that's the issue that the board would have to deal with in terms of that particular lot.
Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Peters, do you agree with Mr. Murphy that all the other bulks that he's asking for are in fact included in the use variance?
Well, certainly there can be a little more testimony, a little more discussion regarding that. But I probably would have waited until his testimony was over to ask him this question. Mr. Murphy, the board did not rezone this property during the use variance application, correct?
They did not, sir.
It is not possible to create 8 conforming lots on this property, which is the reason you were here for use variance originally,
That
correct?
is correct.
So there would be a presumption that any required bulk variances would have been subsumed within the density variance, which allowed for additional lots over and above what was permitted on the lot. Not physically possible to build conforming size and shape lots, given the number that he was granted in terms of the density variance. So with that having been said, then I would concur.
Thank you.
Sure. There's basically 2 letters from Mr. Evans and also Mr. Peters. Mr. Evans' letter is dated January 31st, 2022. We have no issue with his letter. We've submitted after response back, but there's a couple items that they wanted to kind of highlight and discuss. On page 3, item 15, as I indicated, that it's regarding widening Frank Applegate Road. That's a county road. We're going through that now, and they do want widening, and we're doing that. Page 3, item 16, we agreed to reach out to the electrical company, see if we can do more decorative streetlights along the proposed road. And item 3, or page 3, item 20, the recharge trenches for lots 7303 and 7305. It was requested to look and see if we can connect that into the basin. We can't. Honestly, I would have rather done that from the get-go, but grade-wise, we can't make that work. For the RVE letter, rather, dated March 14th, 2022.
Wait. Why can't you?
Because the gravity won't allow me to.
Okay.
In the RVV letter dated March 14th, 2022. Again, I agree with almost all the items. There's a couple items that wanted further discussion. Page 5, item 5, architectural plans. We request to provide them at building permit time. We're not requesting any height variance associated with this project. Page 6, item A10, requested the negative, to go through the negative environmental impacts of this project. The ones that can't be avoided are the permanent removal of trees. Obviously, in order to build the house and the roads and the basins, there will be removal of some trees. The traffic increase due to the eight new homes, the increase of noise and air pollution associated with basically the construction of the site and the additional 8 lots. There will be a slight increase on the demand of public services, and obviously an increase of solid waste generated by the generation of garbage from the 8 new homes. Page 6, item A12. It's regarding what zoning we'd be looking for accessory structures, sheds, and pools. We would request that basically the R1 zoning be held for that, because that's basically what the rest of the site's being held to as far as bulk requirements. So we request that the pools and sheds also be held to that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we can't rezone the property.
Okay.
If the board wants to grant blanket relief for accessory structures that may come before the board, that's fine. And quite frankly, if a successor in title, a new homeowner comes in, this board doesn't have, will never have the authority to rezone the property. So the property is still in the R3 zone. And so people who purchase lots who want to build a pool will have to conform with the R3 accessory structure requirements, which may create a void. They may not have a usable envelope. That's part of the density variance that the applicant got. So without showing us what they want, I'm not sure the board's in a position to grant blanket relief. Those residents would have to come back and get a variance, and their argument would be that there was a density variance which allowed an increased number of lots, which were generally laid out utilizing R1 standards. And then they would have to make that argument before the board in order to grant relief. I'd be happy to continue the conversation if the board members want to, but generally speaking, I don't think it's proper for the board just to say, we'll let these new lots have R1 design standards. That's called rezoning.
Thank you for that input. That's important.
Page 6, item A13. We'll obviously pay any required COA fees. Page 7, item C3, waiver isn't required for the sidewalks on one side because we comply with RSIS.
You comply with RSIS.
Oh, I'm sorry. We comply with the residential site improvement standards.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
since you mentioned sidewalks.
Yes, sir.
There we go. I'm reading Ernie's letter, and his letter clearly states that at least per our ordinances, sidewalks are required on both sides, but yet you're relying on RSIS in order to get a waiver. I'm looking at a beautiful new development with sidewalks on one side and sidewalks down on Frank Applegate. So you're proposing that the people on the side that don't have sidewalks have to walk across the street to get on a sidewalk instead of having sidewalks in front of their house? Am I understanding this proposal correctly?
That is correct. The 3 houses that are on the north side of the street would walk across the street to the sidewalk
And what is the justification for that?
because we comply with the residential site improvement standards which supersede the town's ordinance.
Is that correct?
That's partial. I would say he's not incorrect. However, the RSIS standards also grant boards I consider them minimum standards, not the maximum standards. So the RSIS grants the board authority to issue waivers from RSIS, but also to impose community design that's more consistent with what boards want to see in each and individual community.
If it's the board's pleasure, we'll provide sidewalks on both sides.
Thank you.
Page 8, item E3, septics in the front yard, 50 feet from the septics or request a waiver for tree planting. There's nothing in the state code regarding separation to the septics and trees. I reached out to the health department because I was actually.
It's 10 feet. There is, it's 10 feet.
I actually reached out to the health department. That's my general note is 10 feet in my standard that I use, but the health department actually came back and said there is no standard either. I always use 10, but I would request to keep the 10, which is the standard throughout that we typically utilize. And that's all I had on those comments unless either one of your professionals or the board. Yes, sir.
The last meeting, the neighbors in the area came forward in regards to having water issues. Now, did you do the boreholes?
Yes, we did.
And where is the water table on these properties?
It varies across the property as I would expect. There's the wetlands are most of the lot to the south of the property is wetlands. So I'm not surprised that as you approach that, the water table gets higher as you come across that. But we're able to get basements on each one of these lots with no issue.
Are you gonna be bringing dirt into the property?
That's not the intention here, no. As I indicated, we're not looking to basically clear cut the property and do mass grading out here. We're basically looking to inset the grading on the property.
So what was the water table? You didn't say.
It's about, it varies anywhere from not locating it within 12 feet to locating it about 8 feet down in some areas along that southern border.
How's that sit with you, Evan? 8 feet?
So the way the site is graded and designed, they've provided the minimum required separation distance between seasonal high water table and the basement elevations, which is 2 feet. And they've also provided the minimum separation distance between the stormwater basin and infiltration trenches to seasonal high water table of 2 foot as well. So it complies with the state and the township's best management practices for stormwater management. The site, each individual pad site or house site does have to be raised a little bit. And the applicant has indicated that they believe they're going to balance the site. They're not going to be required to bring material in. However, any material that's excavated for the basins, the stormwater management system, possibly the septics and the road will be used throughout the rest of the site to grade the lots. So if that is not the case, however, we do have a soil import ordinance
Yes.
now that you'd be required to complete the permitting and so on for, if that's the case. With regards to the septic systems, I know we breezed through my letter pretty quickly. I do have a couple comments I want to go over real quick. With the septic systems, we did ask for testimony as far as what are the maximum anticipated number of bedrooms? And I believe your response was it's a maximum of 5 bedrooms for each home and a maximum of 3,000 square foot of living space. The builder is not proposing to finish the basements or add bathrooms in the basements. That's something that can be done by the individual homeowners at any time in the future, however. But the septic systems will be designed for a 5-bedroom home with no ejector pump. That's my
Agreed.
understanding, correct?
Agreed.
Okay. I do want to go back real quickly on the comment regarding the 2 infiltration trenches on lots 7303 and 05.
Yes.
I'd like you to take another look at that. I understand your point about, well, I think when you were asked, why couldn't you said gravity. Well, I wouldn't have asked the question if I thought it could work.
Mhm.
So if I'm going to ask you to go back and take a look at that, maybe we'll work on that during resolution
That's fine.
compliance.
Yeah, we've worked together.
We've got
many
about
times.
3 foot of fall there, so I think
Okay.
that's plenty of gravity for each one of those.
Thank you for clearing that up.
The plans have been revised since our original letter to correct some inconsistencies with the permeability testing for the infiltration system. So that's we appreciate that. And I'm trying to see if there was. No, they've addressed all my major points.
What is the square footage of each individual home?
The final house isn't, obviously, we don't know what that is, but the maximum is 3,000 as indicated by the board.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just one question. Mr. Murphy, could you take a few moments and just go over what the frontage improvements for Frank Applegate are going to be in terms of widening accel lanes, decel lanes? Frank Applegate's one of those roads that the folks that live there know where everyone's driveway is, and they probably drive the correct speed limit. The people who use it as a cut through probably go pretty fast and get lost in sight distances. So could you explain both the extent and the width of the improvements along Frank Applegate for the board and the public, please?
Sure. Yeah. Currently, along the frontage of the property, the the center line width, the half width of the road along our frontage is roughly, it varies, as you would expect, from 12 to 13 feet. We're going to have to bring that out to an even 20 along the entire frontage. We're going to have tapers going to the south. As you exit the property, there'll be a taper coming in, so you'll have an acceleration area to get onto the road. And also there'll be a deceleration taper to the north, be able to pull off the sideways. So right now, there's really no shoulder. There will be a shoulder when we're done with it.
So the county has actually asked you to extend the frontage improvements to off of your site.
Correct.
It's not just along the frontage of your site. They've asked you to do more than along the.
Correct.
frontage of
We're
your
doing the
site.
tapers on either side of the property. And that we're also providing sidewalks, as I indicated, along the entirety of Frank Applegate along our frontage.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
That's my testimony.
Any questions from board members? Yes.
I have two questions, if I may. My recollection is that when this application was first submitted, there was going to be access into the road behind one of your, by the cul-de-sac here, and you created a cul-de-sac, correct?
Originally, we were extending Mary Beth Lane in and creating a cul-de-sac.
Wasn't there some discussion about I may be wrong, about an access for emergency access?
I don't believe so. I don't think.
It was there. You did. They just, you dissolved it.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a change.
Yeah, originally there was going to be an emergency access coming out to Frank Applegate off the cul-de-sac. But obviously that all changed when we flipped directions and came off of Frank Applegate.
So there's no emergent access to the adjoining.
There's no connection at all to Mary Beth Lane.
Okay. My other question relates to the detention basin.
Yes, sir.
I understand it is listed as infiltration basin.
That is correct.
I assume therefore that there is no discharge to any creek or stream or any other municipal facility, correct?
No, there's just a spillway, emergency spillway. That's it.
It sits there.
Takes the full storm. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, I have one more question, if I may. And I guess it's Mr. Hill. I looked at the plan. It's on a drainage. And it looks like there's an area there.
I'm sorry, which sheet? On the bottom right hand, bottom right hand sheet number?
This one is, I don't have that. Sheet number 5 of 19. Anyway, it's a drainage, it's a grading, drainage, and utility plan.
There's multiple drawing. All right, so which lot? Go ahead. We're looking at the old plans.
The question is, it looks like there is elevations 99 throughout a greater portion of that road. And I see where it leads to some catch basins, which are graded at 98. But in between the access road on Applegate to those catch basins, it looks like there's a big, it's all 99. Is that going to sit there, or is that, you satisfied with that?
No, if you look at the proposed roadway grades, both from the center line and along the curb between the inlets, they meet minimum standards for adequate slope to get the water to flow along the curb to the inlets. And also along Frank Applegate Road, the entire curb, the proposed curbing and the roadway pavement also meets the county's, or will have to meet the county standards for cross slope from center line to the curb, and also longitudinal slope along the curb. So
It just looks to me, for example, at Applegate, the elevation is 100. And as you proceed along the proposed road, it goes to 99, except at the catch basins where it's 98. And then it looks to me as if there's a section there where it would just sit at 99. Are we going to have a problem with puddling?
I'm sorry, where, you have
As
to
you
you have
leave,
to point.
as you leave Applegate, it goes up here, it's 100 here, it goes to 99, and then the catch basins are at 98.
You're not, I think, I see.
It's maybe 70. You're satisfied. So you're satisfied that
I'm satisfied that the grading design that's provided on plans submitted for this application are designed to meet the standards, yes.
thank you.
I have a question in regards to your retention basin. What is the plan? The fence up?
Yeah, we would put a fence around it. We have landscaping around it as well.
Landscaping, shrubbery?
Trees, shrubs, we show it on the plans exactly what we're doing there.
I just want to keep the children out of there.
And 100%, I'm with you.
That's my concern. I want that on the record. Thank you.
Through the chair, I have a quick question to Mr. Murphy. I'm looking at your major subdivision plan, last revised February 22nd, 2022. And on the individual lot chart, for instance, lot 73.02, you say that the required front yard setback is 40 feet, but you're providing 71 feet. I think that chart probably should reflect what's being provided. I don't think you're providing a 71-foot front yard setback, correct?
Correct. We're sticking with roughly the 40-foot setback of the R1 1-acre zoning is what we're looking to stick with based on the density variance.
All right, so then that chart should be revised to show.
Yes.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Peters brought that up as well, and we agreed to address that.
Any other questions from board members at this juncture? Do you have anything else to add?
Nothing further, Chair.
Do we have any other witnesses?
We do not.
I think you have anything else?
No.
Ernie? No, sir. All right, now I'm going to bring the public up. Anybody here willing to come forward and have any questions? Any discussion on this application? Come on up.
All right, Mr. Alfieri, sit down.
I will. I follow orders well.
Thrown out of your house.
Sir, kindly raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last, and your address, please?
James Rapp, RAPP, 49 Johnson Lane, Jackson, New Jersey, 08527.
What's your concern, sir, on this application?
I've seen of it, so first I'd like to comment that the retention of the amount of trees that I see reflected on this application is heartening compared to what the developments that we've been witnessing here in town. Thank you very much for that consideration to the builder. But am I understanding that what the builder is proposing here is to build to the density of R1 on an area of Jackson that's currently zoned R3, meaning 3 acres required per homestead? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Other than what we've heard tonight, has he presented any information that would persuade the town council to grant such a variance in an area where people have moved in and expected that the zoning that they moved in was going to remain unchanged? Is there any testimony that was offered?
So, sir, just,
I know I'm not asking questions. I'm asking.
well, all right, that's fine. So
Okay.
I'll try to give you the
Thank
answer.
you.
I'm looking it up as, so that specific question was really asked and answered already. Resolution 2020-46 granted the applicant the ability to present this plan for 8 building lots and 1 stormwater management lot. You should note, just for the record, that originally the applicant had proposed 10 residential lots and 1 stormwater management lot. And after listening to the public and the like, the applicant had presented, I should say, to reduce the number of residential lots to 8.
Well, we appreciate that's going in the right direction, most definitely. But once again, I didn't hear anything here
That
tonight.
question's too late. That question's
So-
been asked and answered.
So in 2020, the applicant was here for a density variance,
Mhm.
so about 2 years ago.
Mhm.
He provided the testimony to support the request. At that time, it was 11 homes. The board said 11's too many. And based on the exhibits and addition and supplemental testimony, it was determined that 8 1-acre lots were more appropriate for this property. So the board in 2020 granted him density variance approval, and it took them this long to perfect the engineering design, which is why we're here tonight. So all what you're asking was already asked, vetted, and approved 2 years ago.
As I said, it's the first I heard of it. And, while I commend the retention of some of the trees, my statement stands that I don't understand why the board would have granted that variance even back in 2020, whenever it happened. R3 is R3. In our township, our history over the last 30 years, we had moved in the other direction, moving towards an almost R20 zone for the entirety of Jackson, which I think was probably the right direction to go. And I see us completely going in the wrong direction. R3 is R3, and people who live in that area, which I do, I don't live that close, granted, but people who do live that close bought into the situation that they did, and the rezoning in the opposite direction with little consideration to the residents that live there and global climate change and the impacts that higher density development has, which of late has been recognized and affirmed by all scientists, is going in the wrong direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public, come on up? Get sworn in.
Thank you, sir, for approaching the mic and raising your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or
Yes.
affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
My name is Lawrence Anderson. I live at 394 Frank Applegate Road. And my question to the
Wait,
group.
sir, I presume you say yes to my question.
I did.
I didn't.
I
hear you.
believe I did.
apologize. Sorry.
Thank you.
You can put your hands up.
Okay.
Hey, just relax. Speak into the microphone and tell
Okay.
us what your thoughts were.
I'm not used to speaking into microphones. Vehicle mics, yes, but microphones like this, no.
Okay. You have a question?
My question is, Frank Applegate Road speed limits are too high. I've already had most of that question answered. There's too many curves, and if they finish with this, if you put this roadway in, it's going to be a hazard. And the only reason I say I know it's going to be a hazard, I spent 10 years with the traffic division, Jackson PD, and I'm retired. I've been retired about 12 years now. That's all.
Oh, thank you very much for coming forward. Logged in, noted your discussion.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience like to come forward? Come on up, come on up. You'll be sworn in.
Thank you for raising your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last and your address, please?
Sure. Stacy Schwartz, SCHWARTZ. My address is 3 Candy Court, Jackson, New Jersey, 08527. A couple questions. It was brought up during this, and that's why I'm saying this now. The stormwater basin. As you know, my property is this side. Can I just go up and show you where it is? Because I don't know.
Well, we should have, someone usually has a pointer.
You know where my property is.
Here's a marker.
So that's my property.
Okay.
Okay, and then to the corner, all the way down, right where this storm, nope, the other corner, where the stormwater drain would meet that property. I want to, number one, just ensure, because you did say there's going to be trees around there, but I want to make sure that there's going to be some secure system because I have young children boys that most definitely would probably want to try to get in there.
Yeah, we're gonna have a fence around.
Okay, because as I pass a lot of stormwater basins in Jackson, a lot of the gates are open.
So I'm raising my hand. Why don't you describe what the fence is? We're just saying like, there's going to be a fence.
Sure, we're gonna have a 4-foot fence around the entire basin, as well as the landscaping as we discussed. There will only be one access gate, which will be locked at the entrance for basic maintenance vehicles coming in and out of the basin.
Okay, and is 4 foot the appropriate height for, because that seems pretty short.
No, it is. It
It
is. And
is.
understand, these are infiltration basins. They're not meant to be, and they shouldn't be wet
They
other
shouldn't be
than
wet.
just during storm events and only for up to 72 hours after that. But during normal, every day without rain,
Mhm.
they should be dry.
Okay. So there shouldn't be any runoff from that basin towards the other end of that lot, because that does get wet there.
There's what's called,
Significantly wet.
there is no outlet pipe from the basin.
Okay.
Okay, but there's an emergency spillway, which is required to be there,
Mhm.
which means once every 100 years, when we get that real heavy rain event,
Mhm.
the 100-year storm event, if anything above that will flow out and into the wetlands, but it's designed to do that.
Okay. All right. I do also want to say that I do appreciate all the trees that are being left on the property. I think that's a huge buffer, which I want and need, and I appreciate. And I do appreciate working with us to flip the roadway.
Thank you for coming forward.
Thank you.
Anybody else out there in public here to come forward? Not seeing anybody come home. Come on up.
And Mr. Chairman, while the gentleman's coming up, may I ask a question? The woman reminded me, Mr. Whomever, if you can describe how's the mechanism going to work to relinquish your rights to the property owners of the gaps and gores that you talked about? Have you thought about the actual mechanism? Are these folks going to get deeds copies of deeds that say, we're giving this to you, we filed it and gave it to you? Or are you notifying that you're doing that?
We're going to do
first?
it via quick claim deed to relinquish those areas, those gore areas.
But how are you going to notify, we're talking with lay people, no disrespect. So why don't you explain,
So
what are you going to do to tell them that they're going to get this property, and then how are you going to do it?
So a quick claim deed is a form of transfer of ownership of a piece of property to an adjacent or to anyone. In this particular instance, we're going to quick claim deed the parcel to the adjacent property, and it'll be a recorded document with the county, and it'll be a public record.
No, my question, I'm going to make a suggestion just to stop futzing around. I think what you should do to those adjoining landowners, presuming the application is approved, part of resolution compliance, is send them letters and say, dear Ms. or Mr. So-and-so, please be advised that this application was approved by the Jackson Township, presuming it's approved. This is hypothetical right now. I'm dictating the letter. Was approved by the Jackson Township Board of Adjustment on such and such a date pursuant to a portion required of resolution compliance. You are to receive the following property and a copy of which is set forth in the deed attached. Please note that we will be filing this deed shortly, and upon receipt of the filed deed, we will forward a copy of the filed deed to your attention. If you
No
have any
objection to
questions,
that.
please advise.
We have no objection to that.
All right.
What if they don't want it?
They want it.
That's the note, that's the reason for the notification. In case they, for some reason, choose not to.
We're gonna swear this fellow in.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got to talking. Sir, I apologize. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information, questions, comments, or testimony you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last, and your address, please?
Keith Stanger, Stanger, 22 Mary Beth Court. It's safe to assume that all the stormwater drains in the street are going to go right to that retention basin? Is that correct?
That's correct.
The engineer stated that the overflow in the basin is for 100-year storms.
Yes,
Water's been 3 feet deep in the wetlands at least 3 times in the last 22 years. So apparently 300 years of storms have happened in the last 22 years. So where's that water going to go then?
it will be going to where it goes today, which is to the wetlands.
Okay.
We'll continue to go to
Wetlands
that
are full,
location.
3 feet deep, 3 times in the last 22 years.
Correct,
You're going to put basements in those houses.
correct.
Okay, the water table is close to the bottom, the foot of those basements.
It's not. We don't go by just where the water table goes. We go by the seasonal high water table, which means you can see how high the water table has been over the years. And that's what we go by, not by where we find the water. We
When
go
was the
by
last time you looked at where the high water table was?
about 3 weeks ago.
Okay. I can tell you about 6 years ago was probably the most recent time. My house was surrounded on 3 sides by water. The only place that wasn't was the street. And it
Okay.
stayed that way for months.
Sure.
The houses on the southwest side of Candy Court, they were inundated with water.
Not
Walkout
surprised.
basements, I believe, and they were inundated with water. I believe the runoff for Mary Beth Court is the southeastern corner of my neighbor's property on Candy Court, which
Okay.
is probably less than 100 yards from your retention basin.
Oh, definitely over 100 yards because of the size of these lots, but I would assume that all that drainage from the existing roadways also discharged to that wetland
I
area.
never assume. So if
Well,
it goes,
that's where it goes.
Pete gets his properties built, and I'm sure they're gonna be nice homes and
Mhm.
everything. 6 years from now, we have one of those storms again.
Mhm.
And we have 3 or 4 feet of water in the yards, starting in October, and it lasts until the heat cooks it off in June or July. Then what?
Well, the yards are graded as such that we won't have that issue on these properties.
How can we correct this, Ernie or? Evan?
I'm correct what?
His concerns in regards to the water around his house.
The-
going into the basement.
So this site is designed in a manner that's consistent with the township standards to not promote uncontrolled, unmanaged stormwater from the property as a whole. It's designed to collect all stormwater, all additional stormwater runoff resulting from the impervious cover, collecting it, managing it in a manner consistent with the standards. If there are neighbors experiencing grading and drainage issues on their properties, that has nothing to do with this project. And what I can tell you though is this project, the way it's designed, will not further contribute to whatever issues that the neighbors on other parcels may be having.
Making that retention basin any bigger, and obviously with the amount of water that we had in the past at times, it's probably just an eyedropper, but making that a little bigger, would that be okay, or?
It's subjective. Look, the way a stormwater basin is designed is they're meant to manage up to the 100-year storm event minimum. Then there's less frequency storm events that have to be managed as well. It's not just the 100-year storm. All right. But beyond that, there's no there is no requirements within the state statutes or the county statutes or the county standards or the township standards requiring that.
If in the event that in the future we figure out that this development or something, because it's attached to the wetlands to the rear, exacerbates the flooding issue, what recourse do the people on the southeastern side of Mary Beth and Candy
You're
Court
asking
have?
questions that nobody can give you an answer to, sir.
Do we
I'm
go
sorry.
back before this board? Do we go to the mayor and town council? Who do we go
If
to?
you're, if you're experiencing drainage issues on your street, contact the town. That's first and foremost. That's not this board's jurisdiction. And what we are tasked with doing here is making sure that any development does not adversely impact neighboring properties. That's why the professionals are here. That's why they have design professionals. That's what we do.
I
Okay.
understand that, but I'm just telling you what's happened in the past. And you're
Okay.
kind of, you're bumping up against the backside of it. So
Okay.
is there a chance that this development can exacerbate that? Because you weren't out there.
In our professional
License-
opinion, no, or we
No.
would have brought that up.
So the applicant though should be affirming the findings. It's not really for the board's engineer. So Mr. Murphy, why don't you address that?
As indicated, the site complies with all requirements for our discharge as far as reductions. We actually have to reduce what's coming off the site today. So after we're developed, even though we're developed, what's coming off the site is going to be reduced. We have to recharge a certain amount of stormwater, and we also have to reduce quality and provide stormwater quality as well. And we're providing all three of those items on the site. So the flow that's actually coming off the site is less than what it is today after
Okay.
the development is built.
All right, Ernie, why don't you clean it up?
Mr. Murphy, are you familiar with where this gentleman's home's located?
I'm not sure which ones.
Last
he's
house on the
referring to.
right on Mary Beth before you get to Candy Court.
So we're on the corner lot?
It would be the corner lot, but the house on Candy Court makes the corner lot. It's the one just before it.
Okay, so you're a little more north, probably roughly
Right,
where,
right about there, yeah.
okay.
Does this site flow to that area?
No, it does not.
So will your proposed drainage flow to that area?
No, it will not.
Thank you.
Yeah, my only concern is because we've had that problem in the past, don't want to exacerbate it anymore, or will it help?
No, I understand your concern, and I'm not saying it's not a valid concern. If you have water in your yard, obviously that's an issue. But what I'm stating is we are reducing what's going out to that wetland. I'm not saying I'm going to fix your problem. You're probably still going to have drainage problems on your site.
Hopefully
your
the
lot.
scientists are wrong and we don't have global warming. So,
All right, sir, thank you.
Thank you very
for your
much.
time. I can't, I'm sorry, can't bring you back up again. Yeah, I had 5 minutes. Somebody else? Give somebody
All right,
else-
and you're not on the record right now. Excuse me. Ma'am, do you want to come up? You can't talk from there. Come on
Come
up.
on up. No, come on up.
Solid areas, having 8 homes as opposed to what it would have had, which is 2 or 3 homes. Increases the,
All right. You know what? If that's the question,
Yeah.
Mr. Murphy,
pretty simple.
so let me make sure I get it. The question I believe raised out by the public, Mr. Rapp, right? Mr. Rapp, and really wanted you address the fact of what happened with the impervious coverage. Let's go back. How many homes would have been built as of right in the given R3 standards? If you
Probably about 4.
And can you talk about drainage calculations, drainage with the addition of 4 additional homes, given the variance that was granted?
Whether this is 2 houses or 20 houses, we still have to meet our stormwater reductions. So would it be more impervious? Yes, as you increase the number of units, you would assume it's going to be more impervious. But that just means we have to provide more stormwater as a result. If we're only doing 4 houses, it's very likely that we may not even had a basin. We might have just done 2 lots along Frank Applegate and 2 lots off of the off of Mary Beth Lane, with very limited stormwater associated with that. Where unlike what we have here is we're able to provide stormwater basin. We meet our reductions, and whether it's 2 homes or 20 homes, we still have to meet those reductions.
Would your client be objective to making it bigger? To make the audience a little bit happier?
I really don't have the room to make it bigger, only because we have the 150-foot buffer to the stream. You can kind of see this wetland is in an arch. We run along that arch. And it's sized appropriately for our project. And as indicated, we don't drain towards Candy Court or the Mary Beth Lane. We drain towards the wetlands to the south. And we will continue to drain that direction, but we will be reducing the flow to that direction.
Yes,
So
sir.
actually, for the chair, I want to build on your question. These homes are designed with infiltration systems for the roof area, okay? Which means every one of these houses has part of what a much bigger basin would have been if it didn't. So that's how we were able, that's how the applicant here was able to design an infiltration basin to manage the increase in stormwater runoff, meet their reductions, but also on each individual lot, right? Incorporate infiltration for the roof, which we see on applications much bigger than this, not on individual single family homes and 3-lot subdivisions and so on. So that just helps. It's not just this basin, it's the on-site on each lot has facilities as well.
Thank you. Okay, so that's your case?
Well, wait,
I'm sorry.
is there any, excuse me, is there any other members of the public wanting to come up to address the matter?
All right, I'm going to close public session.
Through the chair, just one quick thought.
Yes,
A quick question to Mr. Murphy and then a statement. You had mentioned earlier, I thought you mentioned earlier that there was going to be a buffer or a buffered area on the northern part of the property. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, but basically the rear yards of the lots on the north side of the roadway and the lots that back up to the lots on Candy Court. As you can see, we're maintaining at least a 50-foot existing vegetation along both those areas.
Right. But there's nothing, if the board approves it as is, there's nothing on the plan that precludes someone from clear cutting their entire property.
In the future,
Correct.
no, we can't control that. But they would have to get a tree permit from the township.
But I'm saying, well, okay, so it's presented in a way where it was presented in a way, and the public, I think, grasped that nothing would be cleared because that's how it was presented. That's what I thought I heard from the public.
So there are,
I'm sorry. Just a quick question in that line. I'm reading the resolution, paragraph 9, where it says there will be, or there would be, enhanced landscaping and buffering along the residences and boundaries with the existing lots, up to and including conservation easement to be presented to the board during the anticipated subdivision application. Is there enhanced buffering up along where the other homes, the existing homes are located?
Yeah, the enhancement is we're providing it the full 50 feet of trees to remain in that area. And where I think we're all going here is to put a 50-foot conservation easement so that homeowners can't come back later and clear that area. And we would agree to do that along those lots to the north and along to the lots that back up to Candy Court.
Any other questions? I know, Evan, that was cleared up. Okay.
So there was a new question, Mr. Chairman, that may be material to that because the word enhanced. Ma'am, why don't you, I'm sorry to jump on. Ma'am, why don't you come up? Reopening the public because there was a material question to the neighbors that was asked and answered already. You kindly raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear from the testimony, information, Questions or comments that are about to present before the board represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you give us your full name, spell your last, and your address?
Rebecca Nicola, last name Nicola, address is 17 Mary Beth Court. Just my question, so I just saw you point to the surrounding areas excluding Mary Beth. So
Which is
to the
your-
right, or 17 Mary Beth. So we actually have the overlap in question of the property line. So I heard you mention before that we were doing a quick deed, but my question was, would you do the easement to that side? To the right side?
We didn't hear you.
I'm sorry, my voice
Sure.
carries. I thought you could hear. To the right side?
So along the western boundary, and you want
Correct.
to,
So-
just along that north boundary of that
Right,
back
with the
lot.
original plan,
Mm-hmm.
when it would have connected, we would have been the first house on the left before the new cul-de-sac.
Gotcha, okay.
So we have, there's a little bit of gore area there.
Mm-hmm.
I think nobody owns it. So you mentioned an easement on this side and then for Frank Applegate, but not on our side.
So basically, what we're saying is that our entire west boundary,
Okay, perfect.
we would provide a 50-foot conservation easement, obviously minus the portion of the road that's on the property.
Okay,
And the north side along those 3 lots on the north side of the
okay. And that's
lot.
not drawn to scale.
That is to
Correct.
scale.
That is the scale. So what's the setback between the last house on the right and 17 Mary Beth? What's the, I guess, tree line that's being left there?
Well, we're indicating a minimum of 50-foot conservation easement is what
Okay.
we're made.
To the gore area, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now I'll close public session. All right, so what are you planning in regards to garages? How many garages you're predicting?
We're going to have at least 2-car garage minimum.
I just wanted to see the amount of cars that will be coming out. of the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, I would assume a minimum of 2-car garage. Again, we don't have the houses designed for this, but yeah.
Okay, so it's up to us here, board members. I need the questions, deliberations. Carl, you have a deliberation. I know it's there.
Tell you what I like. Ernie mentioned something about it would be inappropriate to provide a blanket relief in regards to R1 design standards, and I think Ernie's right on one, and I think we should give blanket relief. I think that's something. I like the fact that the applicant agrees to put the sidewalks on both sides. Overall project. For the community point of view, it helps us fit in a whole lot better and it's safer. I also like the idea that they represented on the record, and I believe it's elsewhere, that, I'm sorry, thank you, Sean. That it's going to be a max 5-bedroom house, max 3,000 square feet. I also like the positive impact now, the fact that the applicant has agreed to a 50-foot conservation easement. I think that minimizes any detriment that may be perceived to our zone plan and to the zoning ordinance. And I really don't see any significant negative impact to to our zoning plan or to our zoning ordinances in granting what I perceive, and I think I'm right here, is the one bulk variance that they need on 73.04, which is the stormwater basin width. So those are my thoughts, Mr. Chairman.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. I know James is ready.
I'm always ready. Well, I happen to agree with everything Mr. Book just said.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm satisfied also that they place the sidewalk on both sides. I just have to keep in mind that this density variance has already been granted, and the only thing we are here for today is the subdivision. As far as the issue of the accessory uses that were brought up earlier, we have no accessory uses that are before us, so we do not even have to address them today. That could be by a private homeowner sometime in the future. I'm satisfied that as far as the stormwater maintenance has been addressed. I'm satisfied that there is no increase in any negative capacity to the adjoining property owners. I'm satisfied that there's going to be a homeowners association that is going to be maintaining the detention basin, which means it will be their responsibility. And I'm also satisfied with the responses being given by the applicant relative to the gore in the title to the property, that they're willing to relieve any such situation by granting deeds to those property owners who are willing to accept it. I'm sure if they don't, then the applicant can arrange something to retain itself by virtue of an agreement with the other affected property owner. So based on that, I'm satisfied that the applicant has met its burden.
Excellent. Okay, so any other board members? If not, I would like to hear a motion.
I'll move to approve the applicant's application for preliminary and final major subdivision approval based upon the comments, stipulations that have been placed upon the record, along with the representations made by the applicant.
I need a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. We appreciate the approval tonight.
Thank you.
Good night. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break.
I'm on. Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Dante Alfieri on behalf of the, oh yeah, I sound much better now. On behalf of the applicant, tonight we are here seeking the board's approval to construct a 2-story single-family home on block 7501, lot 4. The property address is 283 Matitaconk Trail. I'm going to have one individual provide testimony tonight. That's going to be Glenn Lines. He's going to provide some testimony with regards to the proposed application. If you'd like to have him sworn in.
Mr. Lyons, thank you for raising your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last, your affiliation, and then through the chairman, your credentials, please?
Okay. Glenn Lines, last name is Lines. I'm a professional engineer, professional planner in New Jersey. I've been licensed since the mid-'80s in both engineering and planning. I've presented testimony before this board numerous times. I have I've been out in my own practice for 17 years, based in Lakewood.
We accept the credentials. Just speak a little louder. Is that microphone on?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I just have to hold it a little closer.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Lyons, could you please orient the board to the site?
Yes, the properties on Matitaconk Trail, which is the extension of a road that starts in Lakewood and proceeds westbound up to Brewers Bridge Road. We're the third lot in from Brewers Bridge. The rear of the property slopes down towards the Matitaconk River, one of the tributaries. We have had wetlands delineated, which should have a 50-foot buffer. We've also added the 300-foot conservation easement line to the plan as requested by the engineer. And we are here tonight because the property is undersized with regard to width. The lot is 131 feet, where 150 feet is required.
There's an existing house on the property that's proposed to be demolished, correct?
Yes, there is. I think one of the review letters indicated that it was in dilapidated condition.
And as it relates to the proposed new structure, that's going to contain a garage, a basement.
Excuse me. Can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I
Wait,
apologize.
instead of bending it, first of all, the whole thing rises and from the, can you unscrew that thing?
I think
and lift it
this
up?
should be good, right? I'll just I can't move. I can't move. All
Stay
right.
right
So the existing house is going to be removed and we're proposing to replace it with the new structure that's going to include a basement, garage, new septic, and driveway, correct?
Yes. It's proposed to be a 7-bedroom house, 5 on the second floor and 2 guest bedrooms in the basement. We will be providing 4 parking spaces, 4 parking spaces in the driveway and 1 in the garage for a total of 5, where 4 are required. As far as the neighborhood, there are only on the entire length of the street, there are 29 homes. 5 are conforming as far as width. The remainder are non-conforming, and there are 10 100-foot wide lots, which make up the majority of the lot sizes.
And our lot width is 131.
And we're 131. So we're closer to conforming than over 50% of the lots.
And you've reviewed the board's professional reports?
We reviewed them and we did respond 2 weeks ago to their comments. We did get a revised letter from the planner where he acknowledged we addressed a couple of his comments.
But you have no objection with any of the comments on either of the board's professionals' reports?
No, we don't.
And one of the reports, or one of the comments in Mr. Peters' report was with regards to the submittal of a LOI.
Yes, it has been prepared by Du Bois Environmental and has been submitted. We have not gotten that approval back yet, but we anticipate that'll be forthcoming.
And in addition to the one variance being the minimum lot width, we're also requesting a waiver for the construction of sidewalks, correct?
Yes, we originally had curb and sidewalk on the plan. There was a question about that in one of the letters. When I did my site inspection of the street, we realized there are no curb and sidewalks on the entire length of the street. So we removed them and are requesting a waiver. If the board doesn't grant the waiver, we will obviously put in the curb and sidewalks for that one lot.
The old adage, it would be sidewalks leading to nowhere.
You'll contribute to the pedestrian safety.
Yes, yes, that was pointed out in the board's professional's letter.
And we will get the Ocean County Board of Health's approval for the well and the septic that's going to be installed.
Yes.
So we had a letter prepared for the first submission, which was our letter was dated February 15, 2022. The applicant has subsequently submitted revised plans and revised architectural plans. The revised architectural plans went from a 15-bedroom home with ejector pumps in the basement to a 7-bedroom home with ejector pumps in the basement. The septic system will need to be designed to comply with DEP requirements for the number of bedrooms and the fact that there's an ejector pump, which means the disposal beds are increased by 50% and also the tank capacity is increased by 50%. Now, knowing or with understanding that this is a 1.36 acre lot, historically, this board on lots of less than 2 acres have asked applicants to consider an alternative treatment system or a nitrate dilution system, a pre-treatment system consistent with those that are approved by the Pinelands, even though this isn't Pinelands, we know that. But the board has historically asked people developing it on undersized lots to highly consider that. Or the board has asked them to do it, one of the two.
Would you concede to doing that?
I really don't, I mean, I believe we can increase the bed size as necessary because of the ejector pump. I think that has just as much to do with diluting the pollution and providing a larger bed and everything than the advanced treatment units do.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't agree with that, especially in an area that's on a lot that's, 50% encumbered by environmental constraints. and
We can
wetlands.
certainly consider it, and if it's possible, we'll
It's not a
comply.
part of resolution compliance.
No,
Yes,
so
it
this,
is.
let me project this out for you. So you're either going to agree to do it and keep moving forward, or not agree to do it, or keep it subject to keep it open. And that's going to be, the board's going to have to consider that during their deliberations. If you were to agree to do it, again, that would be consistent with applicants who have come in front of this board similar to this. But if you were to agree to do it, it would be a condition of resolution compliance that prior to a zoning permit being issued and as part of resolution compliance, we would need to see the approved septic design and the county approval for a 7-bedroom home with ejector pump incorporating an ATU.
Understood.
All right, so what else?
So we can continue with the testimony, and then once that's completed, we can get into, I can ask for a 5-minute break and confirm that we can accommodate that request.
All right. Carl, you had a question?
Not so much a question, Mr. Chairman, but I just wanted to put an exclamation point by the comments that Mr. Hill placed on the record, because as I was thinking it, he was saying it. And we have gone through the testimony before, especially in undersized lots. And the science of it, as I understand, is much better with these pre-treatment systems than the standard systems. And I do get concerned about excess nitrite infiltration. And overall, I've seen and found it to be a benefit, and it is a concern. And I'm hoping that the applicant takes that into serious consideration.
We have no objection. We will meet that request.
You want to have a discussion?
We've had it,
Yes.
we did it through our minds.
Don't overtry your case.
Nope.
We agree with the request.
Didn't hear, so thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
James, go ahead. I see you contemplate.
I just have one question. Lot number 5, is that improved? Is there a home on that lot?
Yes, there is.
That's the only question I had. Since he agreed on the nitrates.
I don't know if you have the latest plans. There's 5 on the second floor, none on the first floor, and 2 in the basement. I believe the 1-bedroom that was on the first floor is now the garage.
So, Mr. Lyons, just in general, overall, the new plans reflect the reduction that Mr. Hill articulated down to the 7 total bedrooms
Yes.
with the ejector pump.
With ejector pump.
Did you know it was in the garage?
No, it's not in the garage. It became, that first floor bedroom became the garage by design, right? Is that-
Yes.
Okay. Ernie, go ahead.
Mr. Lyons, I'm looking at the most recent plan, and the 200-foot property owner list indicates that lots 3 and 4 are owned by the same individual. Is lot 3 developed?
Yes, there is a house on lot 3.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, through the chair, if I may. On the plans, it depicts a staircase into the basement. Is that correct? Am I accurate in that assessment?
Let me check. Yes, on the left side of the home, there's an exterior staircase that leads down into the playroom.
Okay, so you're not proposing a two-family house or mother-daughter situation is going to be a single-family dwelling?
Yes, be a single-family dwelling. Generally, the 2 guest bedrooms are for somebody who would be in from out of town over the weekend. And they would use, it's usually the parents in one room and children in the other. And then they go back to Brooklyn or wherever on Sunday during the day.
So it's family,
Yes, it's family.
so you're not renting out the space.
No, that's what it's just for family.
So Mr. Alfieri, this is an application for a single-family home,
This is
correct?
an application for a single-family home.
Thank you.
With single utility
Correct.
service and the like.
If I may through the chair.
Yes,
You're proposing 7 bedrooms, the entire, are you counting the square footage of the home also in the basement? Or are you counting above grade as living space, which would reflect a 2,600 square foot home? And the reason I raised the question, if it's 2,600 square foot home with proposed 7 bedrooms, is the house not a little bit undersized for that many bedrooms? And to be able to service that many people?
No, it's a typical size house.
Typical for a 7-bedroom home?
Well, it's a probably
Is the
90% of
basement-
the time, it's a 5-bedroom home. Nobody's using the guest rooms during the week. It's only for,
The first
for
and
shops,
second,
so to speak.
They're there.
Yeah, whether the usage is not the issue, my concern is you're proposing 7 bedrooms for a 2,600 square foot home. It just seems inadequate in size for its proposed use.
go ahead, Ernie.
Just an observation.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just so we're clear. Mr. Lyons, you have information on the box on your plan that says it's a proposed 2-story dwelling, 2623.49 square feet. The architect has plans. It says the first floor is 2,215 square feet. The second floor is 2,103 square feet. I would assume the basement's around 2,000 square feet.
Yes.
It's a 60-something hundred square foot house.
But do we ever consider the basement as living space and count that in the square footage?
Yes, if it's finished, absolutely. If they're proposing finished living, it doesn't matter which floor it's on, it's living area, right? So in this case, you're looking at 6,400 square feet of living space. Roughly.
thank you.
No, that doesn't include the attic. There's no calculation on the attic, but it is. It's like about another 500 square feet. Maybe another 600 square feet. So now you're looking at 7,000 square feet roughly of living space.
And a follow-up question, how many proposed bathrooms? I'm sorry.
It looks like there's 4 on the plan. So 1 in the attic, 2 on the first floor. Sorry.
1.
Four on the second floor. 1 or 2 in the basement, so that's, say, 5, 7,
8. 8. I count 8.
8 bathrooms.
Yep. 2 in the basement, 1 on the first floor. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the second floor and 1 on this finished attic.
There's a bathroom in the finished attic?
Yep.
Is that a
With a
proposed-
shower.
Is that a proposed playroom?
It's labeled as a sitting room with a bathroom.
How big is your septic system going to be? Have you predicted that?
no, we haven't designed that yet.
Mr. Chairman, it's going to have to be designed to accommodate whatever you approve tonight.
Yes, no, I understand that.
That's what it is.
Well, but I think what the board is querying, if I can create the word a little bit, Mr. Hill, is So can you explain how typically a system is sized? And if it's sized related only to the disclosed bedrooms, do the number of bathrooms provided have an effect on the size as well?
So the septic system design criteria is primarily driven by the number of bedrooms, with the exception of if there are bathrooms within a basement which require an ejector pump. Once you have an ejector pump in the basement, it requires that whatever you're required to have for a 7-bedroom home, as far as the tank and disposal bed size, you then have to increase it by 50%, both of them, both the tank and the disposal bed have to be increased by 50%. Now, with alternative treatment units, you're allowed to take credit for that pre-treatment and reduce the disposal bed by up to 25%. So the number of bathrooms aren't the driving factor. If all the bathrooms are on the first or second floor and there's 20 of them, it doesn't matter. It doesn't come into play with the septic system. It's purely based on the bedrooms.
Well, I really don't want to ask the question,
Go ahead.
but
Bring it up.
so you have this sitting room with a full bathroom, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I was hoping.
So I think where you're going with this, what constitutes a bedroom, correct? Historically, this town has interpreted a bedroom space, regardless of what level it is on, if it has a closet, and if it's in the subsurface, if it's in the basement, if it has egress windows, right? Egress windows are required if you have living space downstairs. Now, most of the time, it's just whether or not there's a closet in a room or not. That's what it comes down to. So on this plan, the bedrooms are adequately identified because those rooms have closets. The rooms that don't in the basement are a playroom and home office and a snack room. Now, is it possible those other areas ultimately get converted to bedrooms in the future? It is. However, if they were to do that, they would have to go back and increase the size of what's going to be a very expensive septic system already.
James, you have a thought?
I have a question. Do we have any municipal legislation relating to the number of bedrooms?
No, and nor does the ordinance speak towards a floor area ratio like a lot of towns have.
And the only variance that's being sought here is for lot width.
Yes, that's correct.
And there are no variances requested for side yards, anything of that nature.
No, there are not. No, there is this. Yes, there is no, there's no side yard setbacks. Sorry, it's just the lot width.
Yes.
May I, Mr. Chairman? I guess, Mr. Lyons, I'll ask you first. And I know that this is an application for the one bulk, the minimum lot width. But I've got a concern over this upper sitting room with a shower thing. I can't articulate it clearly, but I have a concern that somehow this can be morphed or changed into some type of a master bedroom scenario. And from what I hear, it's not intended that way. But how can it be structured or put on the record that that won't happen? If that makes any sense, or Mr. Hill or Mr. Peters, if you can help me out here. Maybe I'm just grasping at straws, but I have this concern in the back of my head that although we're seeing one expressed use here on the plans, I'm thinking that that's going to change and there's no mechanism by which to prevent that change.
So the mechanism is any future improvements to install closets or to make renovations to the structure when it exists would require building permits. And that's the trigger. Beyond that, there is no trigger. You know, you just have to have faith in what the applicant's putting on the record as in testimony.
Thank you. Jeff, do you have anything to add? Okay. Any other board members have questions for this?
Through the chair, the current dwelling that's there, do we know what size that is? How many bedrooms, how many square footage that is roughly?
It's probably 1,000 to 1,200 square foot house. Maybe it has 2 bedrooms.
Thank you.
One other question, Mr. Chairman, please.
Yes, James.
I heard it stated that lots 3 and 4 are under the same ownership. Is lot 3 also improved?
Yes, there is a home on that lot.
Thank you.
Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Any other board members have questions before I open it up to the public?
You said lot 3 was improved in it. Sorry, you said lot 3 was improved and there's a home. How large is that home?
Probably about the same 1,000 square foot size. It's a small older home.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to open it up to the public. Anybody care to wish, have any comments, come forward? And I'm closing. Oh, okay.
Don't worry, I'm not going to read all my notes.
Thank you, sir, for raising your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last and your address, please?
Full name is Timothy Howells, last name Howells. I live at 277 Matitacon Trail, Jackson, New Jersey. I guess I can direct most of my questions to the gentleman here. The first one that I have, I actually live in the house next door to this proposed construction. The majority of the houses on our street are all small, older homes. Mine's actually probably a little larger than some of them, but they're all about 1,500 square feet. Some of them are as small as 1,000 square feet. This house being next to me now will kind of, I'm going to move that up a little bit, change the look of my neighborhood drastically, change the look that I have outside my house. And I also think it will affect the fact that one thing that wasn't covered so far by anybody is the river that's behind my house. The south branch of the Matitacon flows right behind Matitacon Trail. And putting a house this size, removing all of the cover that needs to be removed from the lot to build a house this size, changing how the flood waters and the rainwaters have drained historically. My house was built in the 30s. That house was built in the 30s. It's now going to be torn down. I'm worried as the next door neighbor, am I going to have effects? Is there going to be damage done to my foundation having this large home built right next door? You did speak about the letter of interpretation. I spoke to the office that issues LOIs on Tuesday. I gave them the lot and block number, and they told me they had no record of a letter being requested. Now, that may have changed since Tuesday, but as of Tuesday, they had no record of that letter. And it's important because of the wetland situation. I spoke with a gentleman by the name of Mark Davis. And Mark Davis is the DEP rep for Ocean County out of Trenton. And after talking with him and looking at the way the overlay is, he told me they're outside the zone, and I can appreciate that. But my concern more is really related to how the property is affected, how the wetlands could be affected, but that size of a home and that size of a septic system. And my last point really is the septic system itself. I do have a picture here, and this is a picture of the current sewer systems here in Jackson. And it's interesting because Delaware Trail, which is an adjacent road.
Sir, hang on. So you have to at least show them that picture, and then we'll mark that 01 for identification.
Delaware Trail, which is an adjacent road, it kind of loops around through Lakewood, as well as the Brewers. And behind us, Clearstream, none of them have sewer lines. But the town planners here in Jackson saw fit, probably in the early 2000s,
to put a sewer line in Metedeconk Trail just to avoid this type of circumstance. We have a sewer line that they could hook to. That's all I have.
If I
Yeah,
could.
so sir, can you give that, what we marked as exhibit to Mr. Purpuro and then Mr. Lyons?
Okay. Based on the map he has, there is a pump station over on Brewers Bridge Road, which collects all the sewers from the area. And then there's a force main that runs up Delaware Trail based on that map, and then would connect to the Ocean County Sewage Authority's trunk collector system that picks up everything in Jackson, Lakewood, Brick, and runs it out to the northern treatment plant out off Maniloking Road. So while there is a line there, it's a dashed line rather than a solid line, and that means it's a force main, and that's not something that anybody can connect to. So to put this house on sewer, someone has to propose a sewer development project for that road, which I don't know if the township has anything planned like that.
When the line was installed, it was back in the early 2000s. And like I said, we were told at the time that if our septic systems failed because of the river behind our house, we probably would not be able to get new septic systems permitted because of all the wetlands, and that we would have to hook to the sewer line. I don't know what the map says it's a type of or not the type of, but I do know that's what we were told, and I do know it is on the road. Thank you for coming forward.
Hey, Glenn, did you submit to the MUA, Jackson Township MUA for a service request or a letter of no interest?
I believe that was in the long list of applications we submitted at the very beginning.
You believe it is? You believe or it is?
I don't have it in front of me,
All right, well, hold on a second.
but I know there's a checklist and we send out all those letters to everybody.
Just hold on. We'll get you.
So you may, it says you checked off that you submitted. We don't have a copy of the response. So if from the board's perspective, if you were to vote favorably on this, one of the conditions would be that the applicant obtain either a letter of no interest or that the property can or cannot be serviced by sewer. If it cannot be serviced by sewer, then all the testimony we've heard about the septic system is valid. If it can be hooked up to sewer, then obviously a septic system is not appropriate and a sewer lateral would be, or a sewer connection would be.
Through the chair. Yes. Mr. Lyons, I would like you to address that Mr. Howell's comment about the LOI. And, maybe there was a little misunderstanding there, but I would like to know what your position is on needing the LOI and whether or not you could build without that LOI.
Well, first, we are not in we're not in the 50-foot buffer, which is all that would be required from the wetlands line. We have a retaining wall that cuts the property so that the wetlands and the 300-foot conservation zone that's required are all over on the other side of that retaining wall, so that we wouldn't be grading in any of the buffers and in the conservation zone. I'm only going by the information I asked today. Had it been submitted, it could be sitting in an envelope in DEP. I'm waiting for somebody to come in from I don't know. It could be it could be there. It could be on its way there. I was told that it had been sent out.
Who told you?
My administrative assistant who called the boys environmental. But we will be getting the LOI for that for the line.
That's a prerequisite.
It would seem a reasonable condition if the board acts in the affirmative before the resolution's read, that these outside agency submissions that we can't seem to find are submitted through Jeff's office before the resolution's read.
All right, sir.
The other alternative, I mean, because the board has had some issues in doing that, is carry deliberation until Mr. Peters and Mr. Hill. Ultimately, this is. Gentlemen, hang on. Tell me if this is a good idea, and if it's not, that's fine. I know the board sometimes has not liked the idea of kind of not memorializing until you have this information. So what do you think about having the public speak, carrying deliberation until those agents, proofs of the outside agencies, then the board can deliberate? Because then the board would have before it, during deliberation, the MUA question, the LOI question, as an example.
So we've had, I would venture to, and I'm going to put an estimate out there. The majority of the applications we see would have an LOI in place at the time of submission, or at least at the time of the meeting. There's a good portion, slight minority, we'll say a slight minority of them do not. And it's not uncommon to have outside agencies pending prior to a board hearing an application. Historically, any pending outside agencies would obviously be reviewed as during resolution compliance. Again, after you guys make your decision,
I should have.
they then submit for resolution compliance. That's an administrative review.
I'm going to interrupt on purpose because I'm going to rephrase my question. And it ultimately is the board determination. Are the two outside agents in this application, as we've heard it, as the board's heard it, the two outside agency pieces of information, the LOI and the MUA determination, are they material to the board's deliberation to know that information first?
So any outside agency approval is material to an application. Anyone is, right? They all have implications on a project. The project we just heard on Frank Applegate. If the county wants further road widening improvements, is that a reason for the board to deliberate further? I don't know the answer to that. Only you guys can figure that out. In this case, the MUA, that can be cleared up easily within 2 weeks. That's just following up with the MUA and getting a letter from them saying, no, we cannot provide sewer service to you. That can be done very quickly. So I look at it this way. The worst case plan here is, yeah, they'd have to put a septic system here for which you have testimony on the record for. It's not vice versa, right? You have the testimony on the record for it. With respect to the wetlands buffer, if the DEP comes back and they don't like the line and they don't verify the line, they want the line adjusted, the applicant's obligated to make those adjustments or go for the appropriate DEP permits to encroach or do a transition area waiver averaging within the wetlands buffer. Those are DEP permits that would have to be obtained prior to this applicant being deemed in compliance with the resolution and being able to get a zoning permit. So there are triggers in place already. If the board thinks that both of those are substantial enough to further deliberate, then again, that's your decision. That we have not, on a single family lot like that, we have not gone down that road and adjusted the resolution compliance process.
You have something to add?
Nothing to add, no, just in case something popped up.
We still got
Oh, you got it.
Sir,
Okay,
thank you for raising your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last, and your address, please?
Anthony Verzella, V as in Victor, ERZELLA, 278 Matitaconk Trail. I live across the street. I have lived there since January of '75. I have an AME, which is aircraft maintenance engineer, which is an AE, ME, and EE degree. I didn't get my CE because of the school I went to didn't have soils and concrete. I have done 5 houses so far. I own my own heavy equipment, so I kind of know what's going on. The water is a big problem there. Could you put up the original map plot plan that's in your data? Sir?
Anthony?
The original plot plan for the existing house is in the paperwork. It's a PDF.
It's probably the existing survey.
The one that's got the 5 pages, it's in there too. Take and blow up where the house is, please. No, on the plot, on the original plot plan. That's not it. That's proposed. No, that's not.
He wants to see the survey.
No, sir, well,
Would you blow up the house, please? Okay, move it down a little bit.
Sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. Move it down so you get a little more. A little more. That's good. All right. The last 6 years before the owner died, I was maintaining that property. You see the little wiggles on there? That's as far as I cleared. The bump is where the big pile of logs are from after Sandy, when we pull those trees down. The reason that line is there is all the property past that turns into marsh when there's a heavy rain. You can't even walk on it. Okay, and if you can move it down more, you can, I think he's got the, yeah, it's got the boring mark on it. So if you can slide that down a little more. No, move it down. I don't, it's not on that one. Okay, it must have been on the other one. But where, move it back up, please. All right, stop there. Where it says 93, that's where it shows the bore. Nobody bored there, lived there. You can't miss a 30-foot derrick. I designed my septic system. I had them come out and bore and test, and it was never done. I drove iron rods on there because I actually applied for the variance. I was supposed to own that property. Not another story, but I did the iron rod test. The water comes up to just 4 foot below the surface when the river rises full. That is a marsh. Now go to his new proposed. Oh, the point being, you see those V's? That's the original stream bed where all the water from about 500 feet on either side ran to my house and then across and down through there. What they're going to put on there does not pay attention to the natural grading of the land. They're blocking the water flow. Now please put up his new house. And bring it down just a little bit. That's good. You can see the original gradient lines underneath the fill. Basically, he's totally blocking all the access route for the water. It should be, the original contour needs to be maintained for at least a 5-foot buffer So there's some place for all that water to go because it comes in from the street, goes into Woody's yard. That's who used to own it, and goes down that channel today. Water that comes off the other side comes across the back and goes out that channel. And that is going to completely block that water and build a big dam there. That's all I've got to say about that. That is just bad design. It doesn't take into account what the original landscape is. And that marsh is underneath the septic. Now let's go to the house itself. Because the septic system, I designed mine for a 2.5 bath house. Okay, that meant a 1,000-gallon tank. This house has, from design standpoint, 7.5 bathrooms in it. And I went, how can a one-family home, never mind that. That means it has to have a 3,000-gallon tank minimum, and that field is nowhere near capable of handling that. Now, we have a high-pressure line in the street. My brother-in-law out in Oklahoma works for a company that builds private injection systems, where you put them in the front yard, you hook it up, it fills up like a septic tank, the pump kicks in and shoves it in the pipe. They need to take that into consideration. But that isn't going to work. They do the borings and everything like it's required by the DEP, which I started to do. That's too wet to do that on.
All right, let's ask, did you do boreholes?
Where's the report?
I did not bring it with me.
I'd like to see that submitted to the town.
So Glenn, on your plan, you show the soil boring location, correct?
Yes.
You show the ground surface elevation, you show a seasonal high water elevation. Can you answer his question? Can you answer his question based on the data on your plan, please?
He's correct. If where the soil boring was taken, which we didn't need a large rig to go out there, we did it with a hand auger. The elevation of the ground was 93.25. The estimated seasonal high groundwater was 91.92, which is only 1.5 feet below the surface. We are proposing to fill the backyard and the property so that the new elevation in the backyard will be 98, which we can get a septic system in the ground within all this, with all the state requirements on that property. Granted, the septic system will be in fill, which that's one of the options you have when you build the septic system, is to excavate all the bad material and backfill it to the bottom of the required septic bed with clean material. That's all work that has to be done before we submit for permits to the Ocean County Health Department. As far as the water that goes down the property line, we have proposed a retaining wall because we're filling in the backyard around the property. We've left 5 feet to the property line so that the water, any water that goes down the property line will continue to get on the property line the way it does today, according to the neighbor.
Mr. Lyons, is the amount of fill you're utilizing trigger the need to? Does the amount of fill that you're utilizing trigger an application pursuant to the municipal soil fill ordinance?
It may have to check on the volume of the fill before we.
Yeah.
Contamination. Before it comes checked.
I'm sorry.
It has to be analyzed legally. Documentation has to support the claim that there's no contamination coming to Jackson.
Oh, okay. That'll be done, definitely.
And how high is that hill going to be back there to maintain your septic system? It has to be off the ground if you only have 2 feet You're hitting
They're
water.
raising the yard 5 feet.
5 feet. There you go. There's an answer.
That's why I'm saying that there's a problem with the drainage. It needs to be put in such a way that the ground is contoured in instead of walls being built because the water can't get around the walls.
Obvious 5-foot high berm to compensate for the water table. So this is an issue. You want a hill in your backyard after building 7 bedrooms.
Again, the water will continue to run down the property lines as it does today. We're not building the wall on the property lines. We have brought it in from the edge of the property lines.
Mr. Hill.
The applicant's proposing a retaining wall along the rear of the property along the sides. The retaining wall height varies from, say, 6 inches tall in the front yard to a maximum height of 3 feet in the rear yard. All right. The ground surface slopes away from the proposed dwelling towards both property lines and the rear wall. The wall is positioned about 5 feet away from the property lines. Therefore, there's a 5-foot wide area of existing topo or existing ground surface elevations that remain unchanged and therefore do not alter the drainage patterns right up against the property line.
A comment, please. Right now, when we have a heavy rain, the water that goes next to my garage, 13 feet wide, runs 12 to 13 inches deep. That goes across the street and into that slot. You cut it down by, it's like the Mississippi. You put dikes on both sides, it increases the velocity. If they're going to put that in like that, that has to have heavy rock riprap in there to keep it from washing out, because you're going to have 2 foot of water running through there. I've lived there since
That's why you didn't buy the property.
What?
Is that why you didn't buy the property?
No, I had it taken away from me. That's by the daughter, but that's beside the point.
Okay. Thank you for coming forward. We appreciate your input. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with the applicant filling the property and like he is, it's altering the drainage patterns within the area he's building and filling, but it's not on the outside between the wall and the property line. So it's moving. If there is an issue of off-site stormwater from the road flowing through this property, then obviously this development is pushing it closer to the property line, if not over the property line.
Through the chair, and again, excuse me for being new to this, but is it reasonable to say that in a heavy rainstorm that on either side of the property now, because you've built this wall and you've put your field back there, that you're going to that there's a strong possibility that that water could leach into the neighbors on either side?
It's a possibility because the applicant has not incorporated any provisions in his design to capture that water and convey it with piping to the rear of his property.
Thank you.
He gave you an education on what you got to do.
Yes, I understood what he said.
Well,
Can you do that? Can you create?
We could move the wall further away from the property line if that's what. But as far as building drainage.
I think it would be best.
No, let him answer the question
Well-
first, and then before you interrupt, go ahead.
But as far as, building drainage, we're not proposing a major development which would have stormwater management. None of those things are required by this applicant. We're here for a variance for an existing lot width. That's
it.
That's all we're here
Yep.
for.
Glenn, at the same time, what I'm hearing, I've worked with this board a long time.
Yes.
Okay, what I'm hearing is the board would like you to at least come back or at least reconsider maybe there's a better option to alleviate the off-site drainage. Maybe you need to explore that a little further and see if there's something you can do to better convey that and maybe give the board a better feeling that you've, or a better perspective that you've at least accommodated that.
And to that end, I was going to suggest that based upon the comments that the board has made, as well as some of the neighbors, we would request that we carry the application in order to further evaluate those items and come back to the board with either revisions to the plan or more updated testimony as it relates to the plan we have now.
How much time do you, Mr. Lyons, do you think you would need to, might as well at this point, get those two letters, do some of that drainage evaluation?
Well, we can definitely get the letter from the Jackson MUA about the availability of sewer. We should be able to get that rather quickly.
We have an opening April 20th. Is that something that you could fit into?
So
Yes.
April 20th, Mr. Chairman, is during the Passover holiday. The applicant, in case the applicant wants to be here, that they may not be available. So I would recommend May 4th.
I think May 4th is acceptable. That'll give us a little more time.
Oh, because it's too busy. All right.
All right, so then let's
So
keep it on
May-
for the
May 18th.
May
May
18th.
18th.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Nope.
You, you understood my point, though. All right.
Yes, so we would just request that there's no further notice required.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the public, application number 3, Dubin Contracting LLC, block 7501, lot 4 in the R1 zone, 283 Matita Trail, matters being carried to the May 18th, 2022 meeting at 7 o'clock without the requirement of further notice. The applicant has waived time through May 31, 2022.
No objection. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Say hello to Dad. Okay, so we close at 10:30, so you guys can come up to the next application. Yeah, hand out your picture. Not homework, huh?
Look at your plan.
Is this a quiz?
Doesn't help. I mean, he gave the right answer at the end. All you're looking for, like you said, is that, but he should say.
Nice pretty colors, right?
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. You were right. Yeah, that's right.
Brief but thorough.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Good evening. For the record, I'm Donna Jennings from the law firm of Walensky, Goldman and Spitzer on behalf of the applicant. As the board should be aware, the applicant is here this evening seeking minor site plan approval and a conditional use permit to convert an existing canine boarding and day camp facility to a shul on property identified as lot 21 in block 19501 and located at 26 Whitesville Road. The subject premises currently contains 2 structures, a single-family home, and the second structure is utilized by the former canine boarding facility. The record will demonstrate that the property previously received D variance relief to allow 2 uses on the property, one of which was not permitted in the R2 zone, the boarding, and the proposed application maintains a single-family home and replaces the non-permitted use with a use permitted as a conditional use in the zone. If the board opines that the change in use triggers a need to reaffirm the 2 principal uses on the lot, the applicant will provide the necessary proofs through testimony. The record will further demonstrate that the applicant satisfies all the conditional use standards in the zone to permit the shul. And so this application is actually bringing the site more into conformity with the currently exists on site today. With that said, the existing structure does violate the 100-foot setback as it sits 83 feet off of Whitesville Road, but there is no change proposed in the siting of that structure. And so the applicant does not believe it needs the request relief for the existing site condition for that either. Additionally, please note that in the notice, it incorrectly indicated that the applicant was seeking a parking variance, which will be addressed by the applicant's witness, Ian Borden, who's standing to my left. And just as a matter of record keeping, we are in receipt of one report from Remington and Vernick dated March 14th, 2022, which Mr. Borden will go through. I also have the applicant's principal in the audience, Mordecai Hirsch. I do not plan on calling him as a direct witness, but I will call him up if there's a question that Mr. Borden is unable to answer. And I would just like to add that I am actually filling in for Adam Pfeiffer, who is the original attorney, but it is Purim tonight, and so he's celebrating. And I told him I'd come in and pitch in for him this evening. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Borden. Excuse me? Yeah, exactly. No, he did not.
So Ms. Jennings, before swearing in Mr. Borden, the plans refer to the shul as a house of worship. Do you have any objection to referring to it as a house of worship?
Sure, house of worship. Yeah, we can use that word.
Thank you. Mr. Borden, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last, affiliation, and through the chairman, your credentials as to the subjects to which you seek to be qualified?
Certainly. My name is Ian Borden, President of Professional Design Services on Airport Road in Lakewood, New Jersey. I am a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. It's under that discipline that I'll be offering testimony. I'm a graduate of Rutgers University almost 4 decades ago. Oh, my goodness. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was a wonderful opening by Ms. Jennings, so that made my job a bit easier. So thank you, Donna. So after that summary, I'll just describe the site quickly and go through the conditional use requirements as I describe the site in further detail. I had provided pre-marked exhibits. Thank you, Anthony, for putting it up on the board. And I know the board members also received 11 by 17 color copies of this. So Exhibit A1 is an aerial photograph of the site and the surrounding area. The property contains 2.44 acres and it's bounded in yellow, the triangular property on the exhibit. North is to the top of the page. This is an exhibit that is approximately, the aerial is approximately 6 months old. It's on the west side of Whitesville Road, just south of the East Veterans Highway intersection. 527, of course, being Whitesville Road, and 527, 528 being East Veterans. The surrounding property is generally developed with residential. The property is located within the RG2 zone. That is the Regional Growth 2 zone in the regional growth area of under the jurisdiction of the Pinelands Commission. As Ms. Jennings had noted, the property has been fully developed with 2 principal structures. We have I know the next exhibits will show it more clearly and closer, I should say, but we have 2 structures. Further south is an existing commercial structure, which is most recently the Canine camp is called. And then to the north is a existing 2-bedroom house. Just staying on the general theme of the site, there are freshwater wetlands located behind the property. Those wetlands have been delineated and verified through the Pinelands Commission. The buffer has been verified through the Pinelands Commission. I would note, just for the record, the conservation overlay zone that exists in the town on the zoning map does not apply in the Pinelands portion of town, so it does not apply here. Additionally, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection does not have jurisdiction over wetlands in the Pinelands. Those are retained by the Pinelands Commission, and they have verified those through the certificate of filing that was issued. Briefly on the history of the site that Ms. Jennings touched on, the structure to be utilized as the house of worship, which is most recently the Canine Camp, was originally constructed and occupied as a canoe rental business. That was approved as a variance by the township as a commercial use in the RG2 zone in 1977. My office subsequently did a D1 variance where we changed that commercial use from a canoe rental business to a canine boarding and day camp facility. And that was in 2007. In both cases, there was a pre-existing house, the northernmost structure, 2-bedroom house, which was permitted to remain as a second principal use. Let me just go to quickly to A2, if you don't mind, Anthony, and we'll go right to A3. A2 is simply the variance plan or the minor site plan, I'm sorry, that was submitted to the board. But in this case, because the lot is 2.4 acres and the buildings are so small, when I looked at this, even on my desk, I thought, how could a board member see what the heck is going on here? So I prepared A3, which is very simple, but hopefully more helpful. If you don't mind, Anthony, go to A3. And this is simply an enlargement of the minor site plan that shows the two structures and the existing parking and driveway, et cetera. As noted, we are, and as per our application, we're seeking a conditional use permit for the conversion of the canine camp to a house of worship. A house of worship is a conditional use in the RG2 zone. It is done through section 24490A of the RG2 zone, which is the first listed permitted uses, which by reference lists that all uses permitted in the Pinelands Village zone, which is 244-87, are permitted. And under the Pinelands Village zone, 244-87A, number 3, conditionally permits houses of worship, but does so based upon conditional use standards found in 244-115 in the conditional use standards. And I will quickly go through those standards to indicate how we conform to each one of those. The first one is the required minimum lot area is 2 acres. As I noted, the property contains 2.4 acres. The required minimum lot width shall be 200 feet. This lot contains a width of 457 feet. The required minimum lot frontage shall be 200 feet. We have 665 feet of frontage along Whitesville Road. 665. I'm sorry, I'm probably talking too fast. I tend to do that. D on Whitesville Road. D states that no principal building shall be located closer than 100 feet to any public street right of way and no closer than 50 feet to any rear or side property. The proposed, well, the existing canine camp that we're proposing as a house of worship is located 147.9 feet to the front line and 125 feet to the sideline, and much greater than 50 feet to the rear line. So we comply with that. E states that no accessory building or structure shall be permitted in any front yard, nor shall any be located closer to 30 feet to the rear or side property line. There are no accessory buildings existing, nor are any proposed. F, the maximum permitted building coverage shall be 25%. The canine camp, again, being converted to the house of worship, has a building coverage of 1.3%. So the height of the structure under G, the standard height in the zone is 35 feet, but G, under the conditional use standards, allows that height to be increased based upon the setback of the structure. The farther the structure is set back beyond the minimum setback, you're allowed to increase the height. In our case, the maximum height that we're permitted at this structure location is actually 50 feet, if you can believe it. But our height of building is less than 15 feet. So obviously we easily comply with that. H, the applicant shall submit a list of proposed activities. We did provide a statement of operation. I think that actually might be a good time to add in to talk about things that we had put in the statement of operation. As we were always thoughtful and mindful when we present an application to this board of the fact that a statement of operation is very important to any application, and many times is as much for what it doesn't permit as to what it does permit. So we listed those uses that we believed would be. We always try to answer questions before they might be asked and anticipate. So in that spirit, we listed activities that would not be permitted, and these are listed in the statement that was submitted, but I'll list them very quickly. Weddings, school or educational facility, daycare operations. No person may reside in the house of worship, and the house of worship may not be rented to any individual or entity who is not a congregant. Under I, continuing with the conditional use, the lot shall not have or shall not have their primary frontage or access on a residential access or residential neighborhood street or any lower order street as defined by the residential site improvement standards. Whitesville Road is a county arterial road, so this property or this project is on a street that has a higher order of intensity and meets that section of the ordinance. Under J, it requires a 50-foot buffer to a residential use or district. We do propose a 50-foot buffer along the side and rear of the property. Again, it's a triangular lot, so that's two lines. The third line runs along the road. And we are proposing that buffer. We did propose landscape buffering, evergreen trees in the area adjoining the sideline where the existing parking area and building are located. Those trees will be evergreen trees that will be native. We're required in Pinelands to plant all landscaping that's native in the Pinelands. I know that was a question in the planner's review about the species, and we'll certainly provide those, but they'll be evergreen trees, minimum of 6 feet high, and they'll be native to Pinelands, typically a shortleaf pine or a red cedar are the most popular that you can acquire from a nursery. So that is the conditional use standards, and we do comply with all of those, thereby the request for the conditional use permit for the house of worship.
And just if I could go back though to H, when you were talking about the statement of operations, we're also
Yes.
supposed to indicate the hours. And what was most significant was the number of people in there, because I believe in your original application, you had a typo because you had used an older rider for something else. So if you could clarify that, because that also goes to the parking issue.
Sure, certainly. Yes, we described the hours of operation as 7 days per week, commencing early in the morning. I believe we said 8 a.m. I'll get into more of this detail with the minor site plan testimony, which is next, but the sanctuary area in the building, we provided an architectural plan on the latest submittal. And the sanctuary area is 594 square feet, which requires 12 off-street parking spaces. The original statement of operation that I submitted had listed in there 100 persons. And that was just an error on my part. I would say my office's, but it was my part. Because this statement of operation, when I talked about the uses that we were not permitting, I can't claim credit for thinking of all these, because I had done a previous house of worship in Jackson on East Veterans Road that was a brand new shul about 2 years ago. And that exclusion list was basically developed through that planning board process. That project had 100 parking, had 100 people. So that was just a phrase, unfortunately, a sentence that was from another project. That project is a brand new 6,500 square foot multi-level building. Nothing obviously close to our modest sanctuary, which is less than 600 square feet.
occupancy?
35.
35 was what my client anticipated.
And he did submit a corrected statement of operations in January.
Right. In January, I had modified that to 35. And then I submitted another one in March. In preparing for the hearing, I actually listened to Mr. Hill. He might not think I do, but I listened to him very carefully because I wanted to make sure, we wanted to fine tune our site plan. I know the board likes to see site plan details. So we tried to fine tune those. We also wanted to address comments that were in the planner's review, Ernie's letter that we had. So we kind of did that all and provided the architectural plan at the same time.
So 8 o'clock, okay, to when?
Well, services typically last 45 minutes.
How late is the last car going to be leaving?
Services, an evening service may start or would start just before dusk. So typically the last service would end immediately after the sun goes down.
And how many cars do you have placed for the?
12. The ordinance requires for a house of worship, the ordinance requires one space per 50 square feet of sanctuary area. And the architectural plan that was provided, which is actually Exhibit A4, shows the sanctuary is 594 square feet.
If I may, through the chair, just to maybe broaden that question. So the use itself, the house of worship use, right, is conditionally permitted, correct?
Correct.
And you also say in your statement of operations that there may well be varying times of hours of operation for holidays, correct?
Yes.
So why don't you, given that fact, given that although you're talking generally about the hours of operation, there are certain holidays that, for instance, people stay till midnight, do other activities, what have you. Do other activities. I don't know why I'm tired. I apologize. Activities or what have you. Talk about maybe the parking and the lighting plan. I know it's the site issue, but that'll go perhaps to the chairman's question.
Yes, thank you. That was a perfect segue to what I wanted to talk about next. Thank you, Sean. So as I mentioned, if you don't mind, I'd like to go through my notes. I'll get there. Otherwise, I get lost and I'm getting older. So as I stated, we had 12 spaces, which meets the ordinance standard because we're required to have one per 50 square feet. The total, now I'm talking site plan. So when I describe these things, I'm also including the second principal uses in the house. And now an example is that the total building coverage of the site, when one includes in the existing house, is 4.3%. So it's still very low. We are proposing to slightly modify there's an existing gravel area, the parking for the canine camp that was constructed as approved in the 2007 site plan. And we're basically, for lack of a better word, we're removing some of the gravel that's inside the buffer. We're squaring off the gravel, was built imprecisely, I would say. And we're also adding a paved handicap parking space. And we're also adding a cart corral for the refuse, which I'll get into in a second. But so we have gravel parking with a gravel access to Wedgesville Road. Those are existing. We're adding or modifying less than 1,000 square feet for the gravel and pavement. And we're providing parking bumpers to define the parking spaces. As far as lighting goes, there is building mounted lighting on the structure that's proposed, that's shown again on the architectural plan. We are proposing a single solar site light at this location, which is where the access drive turns into the parking spaces. Again, trying to be considerate in a way that meets the needs of the project. In other words, as I testified, there's really no activity long after dark. So we just need a brief period of lighting in the dusk hours. So I had actually recommended that to my client, and that triggers what I'll get to in a few minutes, which is a request for a design waiver for site lighting. We're seeking not to comply with the site lighting requirement, which is 1 foot candle of illumination along all parking and access drive areas, but simply we believe it's appropriate to provide the building mounted light and the solar light. I'm just thinking as I'm speaking, I think a relevant question that if I was one of your professionals would ask is, could you show us the photometrics of that? And we could do that. But it won't meet the 1 foot candle for the ordinance.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Borden, I just have to get it out of my head at this point, and it doesn't have anything to do with lighting or Ms. Jennings. One of the two of you, it's not clear in my mind. I'm looking at the documents before me, and it suggests, at least in one spot, that the maximum contemplated congregants here would be 100. Is that still correct?
No, I just said that's a typo from another project.
And so what is the maximum?
35.
35.
Is the new number.
Yes.
Yeah, and there was a submittal back in January that clarified that.
Yeah, as I was going through them, I saw an older one and I saw a newer one, but I wasn't sure that the newer one took over the older one. So
I
I
understand.
got all mixed
That's-
up in the paperwork. So we've got a maximum of 35 congregants. The other thing, if it would be helpful, because it'll help clarify issues regarding to both parking and to septic. And that is, of the 35 congregants, I get it, the building is approximately 600 square feet. But what I need to wrap my head around is, I don't know what the flow of the use is. If it's a maximum 35 congregants, is that 35 every hour, 35 every 2 hours? Is that 35 10 times a day? I'm trying to get an idea as to what the expected intensity of the use would be throughout the day, 7 days a week, and from what hours?
That would be typically 35 twice per day, once in the early morning, once at dusk.
And that would be 7 days a week.
Yes.
Okay. That helped. Thank you.
That's good for today, but tomorrow you might have more parishioners come and enter. You got 35,
Well,
let's say.
we only have 594 square feet, so.
I'm just saying, what I don't want to see is people parking on Whitesville.
I understand.
Well-
Certainly that would be prohibited.
Okay, so let's ask the question slightly differently, which is, what's to preclude a service at 8 or at 6:30 and then at 8 o'clock in the morning? Other than you will not have any morning service earlier than 8 o'clock.
I think the key there would be, we're not going to have any overlapping services. I think
Well-
that to me would answer your concern.
Well, because the issue, I think, I'm asking for the chairman is there enough room? on
So
the-
Sean, the applicant has indicated that 8 AM is when they start, so they're not going to have a 6:30. So if you want to
There
make
won't
the
be any
approval
room.
conditioned on 8 AM, that's acceptable.
And so therefore, there's no need for turnover. There's only going to be 2 services a day.
I believe there's actually 3, but not 35 people. Sometimes there's one at noontime, somewhere around there, or am I mistaken?
Is 2 services. All right, so,
All right.
yeah, but you're not.
You're not sworn in,
you're not,
right.
Affirmed.
What I don't understand that. Say that again.
So here you go. So Ms. Jennings asked a question, generally speaking, although it's a house of worship, Ms. Jennings indicated that it's being built for folks of the Jewish faith. So folks of the Jewish faith, you pray 3 times a day. Shacharis, Mincha, and Marv are the 3 services names in Hebrew. So, however, if you start the evening service slightly before sundown, generally speaking, the afternoon and evening service are combined into one. So that's what the applicant is saying, that as a condition of their approval, they're indicating they will never have that afternoon service as a separate and distinct service. It will always be conducted as a unified afternoon and evening service.
Thank you.
So just a quick point. So based on the 35 congregants, I guess at one time, that number needs to be in concert with the fire official as far as the capacity for a building that size. Is that something that was researched by the applicant?
We are obligated to receive as an outside agency approval from the Board of Fire Commissioners. So we'll certainly
We will comply with.
be
building
required to have that before we can commence the project.
When you're saying 35, is that husbands and wives total?
It's total people.
Total people.
Not to beat this issue, but even on a holiday, it's still gonna be limited to only 35.
Right, the
Yes.
people that actually belong to this particular shul. They're
That's
the only
correct.
ones that go there.
Mr. Chairman?
And on the days where you would think most people would go like Christmas Eve, when you can't find any parking anywhere and you're parking in the bank parking lot or wherever else, they walk to their services on their high holy day. So there's no parking issue.
Through the chair, that brings up a question that I have or concern that I have about safety. If you look at the aerial map of Whitesville Road, there are no sidewalks.
I'm getting there.
Yeah, because that's a question. Yeah, that's in the Mr.
That's on
Peters
my
report.
notes.
James?
Mr. Borden, I'm reading the statement of operation, and just so that I'm clear, the statement says there will be religious services each day, 7 days per week, starting at 8 a.m. More will be on holidays. What's that more refer to? Does it refer to services? I know it doesn't refer to days because it's only 7 in a week. What does that refer
Services,
to as
right?
far as hours are concerned?
Yeah, it's services. But under the high holy days, as Ms. Jennings stated.
It
that
says
you-
religious services, and then it
Yes.
says, but more on holidays.
Yes,
Something other than religious?
no,
More type of religion?
more, a higher number. I know that it didn't specify the two.
Longer services.
Right,
So not the typical 45 minutes, you're in at 8 a.m., you're out by 9, then you come at sundown and you're in and out in 45 minutes or so. Now, during the high holy days, they're in there praying a lot longer.
more is just the more time spent in the house of worship by the congregants. It's not more activities.
All right, it continues and says the following are not permitted on the property. These are things that you're not going to allow?
That's correct.
So you're not allowing weddings?
Sorry.
In that same document, in the statement of operations, following, or in that same paragraph essentially, that talks about the hours and the services, it lists the following are not permitted on the property. And it lists weddings, school or education facility, daycare operations. No person can reside on the property.
That should have been.
No, in the house of worship.
Okay.
Because we have the single family home.
The house of worship may not be rented to any individual or entity who is not congregant of the house of worship. Right. Now, I'm also understanding, I think, that your testimony is that this is a conditional use permitted in this district, correct?
Yes,
And that there are no variations from the conditions, correct?
correct.
So why are we here?
That was a discussion I had many times when I submitted my initial attempt to accomplish my client's goals of changing the use. We actually started, my office, I started the process with an application for a zoning permit. In my opinion, that was all that's required. The staff determined that we should come here for a conditional use permit.
And there are two issues. It's come before the zoning board in the past. And the one conditional use is that no structure may be closer than 100 feet. The single family home is technically 83 feet. So there's an
But that was for
issue.
the use that was granted. by the
Correct.
parents.
I believe we
What does
didn't
that
need
have to
it.
do with us?
It shouldn't.
It shouldn't, but these are the types of issues that came up. And then the fact that there's two principal uses on the lot and they changed the use in the one building. So we were directed to come here. My opinion is we meet the conditional use standards, but if you guys determine we don't, we were going to reaffirm the prior variances that were granted.
All right, Mr. Borden, one other question before I forget. Too late. That's what happens when you hit 82, it's normal.
I'm with you, Judge.
Now, I think the question related to the conditional uses. There's going to be a separate building to be occupied by whoever forgive me, I don't know the proper terminology. I was going to say pastor, but rabbi. Okay. That facility, that house, is that going to be occupied by the rabbi?
No, that house is a separate principal use. It's a separate residence, not associated with the house of worship.
But it's
That's the
on-
way it was
But it's on
approved.
the same property.
I understand, but that was a variance that was granted both with the canoe in 77 and with the Canine camp in 2007.
So the variance requested is to allow two buildings on the same property
We don't believe we need a new variance because the variance was previously granted.
for a different use.
I understand. If the board feels differently, I'm prepared to offer testimony on that, but that was my opinion.
May I follow up, Mr. Chairman? Do you have copies of the prior resolutions?
I
Yeah, they
do,
were included in the application. You have them.
and I do have them.
Is that going to be a rental property?
Yes. It's an existing two-bedroom house. There's no modifications proposed, no expansions, no changes whatsoever.
When that variance was granted, was the occupation of the home associated with the canine facility?
I don't believe it was.
It was. That's why I'm looking for the resolution.
And my recollection is reading the documents here that was associated with the canine facility. So it essentially became like a single use. But now you're talking about two separate uses
Thanks.
with two separate buildings
I
on the
understand.
same lot.
But the resolutions do describe them as two separate uses.
So what? That's my question. I mean, you're testifying that there were two separate uses permitted. My question to you is with respect to this application, so what?
Not two separate uses permitted, two separate uses previously approved.
Okay,
Two separate uses are clearly not permitted in the residential zone.
so it was approved. Now my question still is, based on this application, so what?
Well, I understand, and that's why I'm prepared to put on the planning testimony to support that
Okay.
second principal use, if that's the board's opinion.
Any other questions? You got a question?
Through the chair. I'm sorry, I almost lost my own train of thought there. Is the house already being rented?
Yes,
Thank you.
Through the chair, is the garage currently being used? Are any activities at the moment taking place there?
no,
Yes.
well, just the intent there was that the congregant might use the house of worship for a Bible study or something like that during the day.
Mr. Chairman, may I follow up?
Go ahead, James.
The frontage, I think you testified, the frontage on the existing lot is what, 665 feet?
That's correct,
Minimum required is 200 feet.
correct.
What if you divided that single family house out of the house of worship?
That's not our proposal.
I'm just asking, could you do that? You would create two lots that conform.
I mean, just looking at I'm spitballing this, but
You'd have to
looking,
create two driveways. Why would you
and
want-
looking at the proximity of the houses, to create a side lot line would clearly create, I believe, setback variances. You'd have a question of, a single driveway. I mean,
Well,
that's not what we
What
propose.
are the side yard setbacks required?
I'm guessing when I say this, but I believe it's 50 feet.
I don't think we can do it. I mean, the minimum acreage is 2 acres and we have 2.44 acres. So how could we divide it in half?
Well, that's a good point.
That doesn't make any sense.
That you would render the house
Minimum acreage is 2 acres?
Yes.
for a house of worship,
For a house of worship. Yeah, okay.
and the minimum acreage for a
What-
house is 1 acre.
And what's the total acreage here?
2.44.
All right. Answers that question.
Go ahead. Well, he's done.
I'm done.
Mr. Board, you mentioned that a congregant could rent out the house of worship, correct? They still, even if they have a Bible study, they still are mandated by the 35.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Absolutely. I mean, rent is probably a poor word, poor use of words.
I was trying to think of
Use.
something else.
Any other questions from board members? Over here. Go ahead.
I just want to hear about the sidewalks and the concerns
Yes.
about pedestrian safety.
Yeah, Ian.
Well,
has
let's
not-
just jump right to that.
You haven't finished your
If
testimony.
you go back to the aerial, if you don't mind, Anthony, A1. I think it's visible on there. Yes, so you are correct, Ms. Spelthoff. There's no sidewalk currently on the west side of Whitesville Road, nor is there any on East Veterans. There is sidewalk on the opposite side of Whitesville Road as part of the Calandula Court subdivision. So there is sidewalk on the opposite side of Whitesville Road, and I can tell you that I am the next, just off this map is a subdivision that's been approved for many years at the planning board. It's called the Hunter subdivision, which is extending sidewalk farther down Whitesville Road.
So I apologize. Do you propose to put sidewalk in front of your?
We are not proposing sidewalk as part of this application. Again, the intent of this is a minor site plan just to utilize the existing building.
But through the chair, it's safe to say then if the sidewalk is on the opposite side, that congregants would be walking across
Yeah, it's
that
correct.
busy road without crosswalks or, right?
That's
I
correct.
have a hard time believing that they'd walk all the way down to the intersection, use the crosswalk there and then walk up the shoulder.
Right.
It's just a concern, right? You know, especially people coming around that turn quickly.
No, I understand. If you go to A2, Anthony, please. I think we can see it there. Yes, you can. Yeah, see the sidewalk extends across. The driveway is here, our driveway, and the sidewalk extends, across our driveway.
That's a double yellow line though, correct? As I'm looking at the.
Yes, that's correct.
That wouldn't, to sound silly, but if you were to walk across that, that would be jaywalk, right? I mean, from a legal standpoint, right?
All right, Ernie, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Borden, to Mr. Spouthoff's question. You're not familiar with any municipal plans to install sidewalk in this area, are you?
No,
You do a lot of work in town. Are you familiar with any projects that would extend sidewalk in the general area of this site?
other than the Hunter subdivision I described south of us. And there is a subdivision across the street called Pine Rock, which is also doing sidewalk. But no, other than that, no.
Through the chair,
Yes.
I'm sorry. Through the chair, do we know if any of the congregants come down from not from Whitesville, down from East Veterans? Is there any pedestrian traffic that way?
Yeah.
So that would
The
be-
the congregants for this will be coming from the Calandula side.
That's what I'm hoping, but
Yes,
presently, there's no members are north that would have to
Correct.
walk from the intersection.
No,
That's
the-
terrible.
That's correct.
Yeah, I wanted to, whether it's through Ms. Jennings or Mr. Borden, I want to make sure that the applicant understands that the towns doesn't have plans to put sidewalks in and about this area. And that by choosing this site, they're choosing a site that doesn't really have pedestrian connectivity except for what's across the street. I just want to make sure we understand from that perspective that there's no municipal plan, to the best of our knowledge, to extend sidewalks to provide pedestrian connectivity or safety in front of this track.
understood.
So if I may, maybe further complicate matters, but it's the testimony that most folks are going to cross Whitesville Road.
Correct.
So would it be, you're smiling or cringing? Oh, okay.
That's because I praised them. I shot
I'm
them.
looking for signals. So, and we've had, the board's been tasked with this before, and given the fact that the chairman was whispering to me that we generally close at 10:30 in any event. What would it be possible, and I know the county does not generally like mid crosswalks or something like that. Is there a way to investigate a better way, some pedestrian demarcation to get folks across a major county road?
All I can do is have the conversation with the county
It's
engineers.
not a crazy ask.
No, I was wanted to propose it, but I don't know if it's a crazy ask. I'm not a traffic engineer, so I'd like to.
The
consult
reason
with
it's not a crazy ask is because assuming this project gets approved and occupied and the residents decide it's a problem, it will happen. It'll happen at the governing body.
Good point. So I would, yeah, we'll have that conversation.
Maybe this is, Mr. Chairman, you were asking me, maybe this.
Yeah, I want to open up to the public, give them an opportunity.
Do you have another question?
Not a question, but one more with regard, and I haven't got, well, you spoke, you stepped on it lightly, the lighting situation.
Yes.
And my concern, because we're probably going to continue this, but my concern for the pedestrians coming onto the property or leaving the property after dawn, dusk, that they're, you're talking about a gravel driveway, et cetera. At least place a light somewhere along the driveway, the entrance driveway.
That's a good point, Mr. Chisholm. We'll add a light up at the, I talked about one being at the juncture of the driveway and the parking, but I'll place another one closer to Whitesville Road. Yeah, I agree.
All right, it's been traditional that we close at 10:30, so what I'm going to do is open it up to the public to get a concept of what they're feeling. So I'm going to open it up to the public at this juncture. Anybody want to come forward to have comments or make a statement, you can. Come on up and get sworn in.
Based on the testimony heard thus far.
Yeah.
Ma'am, thank you for approaching. Thank you for raising your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information, questions, comments, or testimony you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last, and your address, please?
Elena, Elaina, Puglisi, Puglisi.
And your address, please.
824 East Veterans Highway, Jackson.
You go ahead and say what you'd like.
Okay. I've lived there for 52 years.
Just bring the microphone to you.
I lived there for 52 years. Okay, you still can't hear me? Oh, there you go. Okay. The canoe place, the person who owned the canoe place lived on the property. That was his property. The canine, same thing. I was here when the canines came for the variance. They were two women, lived in the house, wanted to have a canine place. So I don't have a problem, for the record, with the house of worship. That's fine with me. Don't have a problem with the 83-foot buffer, whatever you call it, setbacks. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with 35 people and 9 parking spaces. That is impossible. I know that they walk, okay? But they only walk on Friday nights till Saturday sundown. Other than that, both in the morning and at dusk, they will drive. I go down Whitesville Road every morning to work. There is a residence there, and I don't know if it's approved or permitted or what. They do a worship every morning, 7:30, I see them. It is a residence on Whitesville Road. 19 cars are parked on both sides of Whitesville Road by that house. Now, it isn't an issue because it's a very, very wide shoulder on both sides. Gives them ample space to park and get out of their car safely and cross the street. My point is 19 cars, one person comes out of each and every car. And that's not including the 8 or 10 cars that are parked in the driveway. So 35 congregants, they're not going to walk every day. They're not going to carpool. They're going to drive. Okay? Where are they going to park? For their own safety. That is the craziest road around here. You're only maybe 200 feet from East Veterans Highway. Tractor trailers, dump trucks, garbage trucks, crazy drivers. I'm there every day. You don't have enough time to make a fast turn. Don't forget, there's a right turn arrow, okay? They just go zooming there. It's a safety issue for the people, for this house of worship. Somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get killed. There's not enough room for somebody to stop because it's too close to Veterans Highway. It's awful. I mean, if they guarantee that there will be no parking on Whitesville Road, but where are they going to park? 35 congregants. They're going to walk on Friday nights and Saturdays. That's it. Other than that, they're all going to drive and they're not going to carpool. They're all going to come with their cars individually. You see it everywhere. Sometimes it's on a residential street where there's 25-mile-an-hour speed limits. Fine. I don't care about that. Not there. It's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. And then what happens daylight savings time when it's dark at 4:30 in the afternoon? And that's commuter traffic. Do you know what it's like on that corner? It's god awful. So opposed to the house of worship? Absolutely not. But the parking is a disaster. The safety issue is a disaster. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think it's fair or right to break that piece up into two individual, I mean, it's one piece of property. Maybe when years ago, when the canoe man, maybe that was the deal, that you needed two separate, but they lived there. They lived there, they operated a business there. So they were made, to have two different reasons or variances. Same thing with the canines. But this is different. If a rabbi was living there, or if it was a Catholic church and a priest was living there, it would be fine. But don't tell me that you're going to have 35 people in a house of worship on this side of the property, and you're going to have a rental on that side of the property. It doesn't make any sense.
Beautiful. Thank you for coming up. Thank
Okay.
you for getting your statement. You have a rebut for her?
I have a clarification, or maybe not a clarification, but additional information on the parking that might be helpful. If you don't mind, Anthony, going to A3. This is where ordinance, maybe, in my opinion, are not helpful. The ordinance for the conditional use requires that you're not allowed, for a house of worship, you're not allowed to have parking within 100 feet of a road. That 100 foot is this dashed line that's right here. So when I calculate my parking for the house of worship, when I seek to comply with the conditions of the conditional use, I need to provide my required parking behind that 100-foot setback. And in fact, we do have 12 spaces behind that setback. What we do have, however, though, is an additional 6 existing spaces, 3 on the left here and 3 on the right here, that are within 100 feet, that are available for parking, but I cannot, under the conditional use criteria, count them against the number. So in reality, the site has 26 parking spaces, only 20 of which comply with the conditional use requirements, which do comply with the ordinance. We didn't write the ordinance. The ordinance says 1 per 50 square feet.
So let's just break that down so people
I
understand.
know, that's like,
No, that's okay. And maybe when I say people, maybe I don't understand. I'll put it to myself. So let's first, is your argument or testimony that with 35 congregants, 12 parking spaces comply? Is that your?
yes.
Okay. Nevertheless, hang on. Nevertheless, in answer to someone from the public's concern about providing parking, your testimony is the existing site conditions provide for an additional, 6 spaces?
Correct.
So one of the reasons, this is really just an open point now. So one of the reasons the board has traditionally opened matters to the public, even though matters are not complete, is to allow applicants and the board to hear concerns of the public. So that, for instance, I'm just putting this out there for education purposes, the applicant may well consider, depending on this testimony, formally seeking the parking waiver or the variance in this particular case to allow parking within that 100-foot setback, at least green banked or something. I'm just throwing ideas out at the same time, because at some level it may meet the concern of the public, even if it's not required. It's ultimately up to the applicant to do that. Really, again, I speak that as point of reference and as an attempt to educate the public of the process than to make any major suggestion or not. The applicant would reserve its right not to do that.
Yeah, I get that, Sean. The applicant, though, would like an opportunity to address the board if he could. If I could bring him up just quickly.
I got another person in the audience. Let him come forward and then, and then wait, listen to what he has to say. And I think he's the last one. Nobody else is going to come up. So let him make his presentation and we can do both together. All right, sir, we're going to get sworn in now.
Sir, thank you for raising your right hand. Do you solemnly, swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Can you give us your full name, spell your last, and your address, please?
my full name is John Puglisi. I live at 824 East Veterans Highway, around the corner from this piece of property that they want to put a synagogue, house of worship, which really is not conducive for that purpose. Just imagine putting 35 people in a 600 square foot space. First of all, I don't think the fire department would allow it. Number two, that corner, is my wife testified, is so dangerous that I don't know if any of you people are familiar with that corner. They knocked the traffic light down 4 times. The telephone pole across the street, I don't know how many times that thing has been hit. And the traffic is unbelievable. That is not a place for a synagogue. I'm not against synagogues. They're nice people, they're praying, whatever they're doing, fine with me, but that's not a spot. And that little house that they show you over there, it's a shack. There was dogs in there. There's nothing to it. That's not a house of worship. This thing is only the tip of the iceberg, what they're going to put there. Once they get a foothold, you could forget about it.
So that's speculation. We have to deal with-
I
we
understand
have
that,
to
but
address what's before us. Can I sort of attempt to try to translate what you're saying, though? So another suggestion to the applicant, based on some of what I think the board is hearing, is there needs to be more testimony as to the interrelation between, I think you need to respectfully review those, at least the Canine resolutions and the intent, coupled with the testimony from the public. And there needs to at least be more testimony as to the interrelation of the house that the residence that you maintain, wish to maintain, and the house of worship, because, well, I'll leave it there. I think that would be important information.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I promise 20 seconds. I
To
promise.
who? To who are you going to go?
Just on the parking issue, just to ask, can they
All
put
right.
parking behind the house?
Go ahead.
Can you develop a parking area because of the concerns for parking from residents? Can you develop parking areas behind the house,
Well, we've already,
behind the house you intend to rent?
I understand. The answer is I don't know. I don't know where the septic, I don't remember where the septic system is. I have to look at the site plan more carefully. But, I mean, the project does comply with the parking, and we are looking at utilizing possibly this additional parking that is already existing if we seek a D3 variance, so.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it's obvious we're not going to finish tonight. And we're trying to collect information from the applicant, from the board members, and from the public. As Mr. Borden just finished stating, regardless of the intensity of the use, if there's a concern about public safety in terms of off-street parking, perhaps another sketch showing something that would meet the perceived requirements of off-street parking, but may require a variance. Because at some point, if the board members or the public are thinking that with a maximum of 35 occupants, I could have a maximum of 35 cars, what can we do to provide 35 cars on the site? Mr. Borden will come back with a couple of sketches that says, well, this one would do this, and this one will require this relief. And that way, at least we'd sort of get to the bottom of it quickly. So the way to provide 35 on off-street or on-site parking spaces would probably require some form of relief. So I think that's probably part of their homework assignment.
Good. Okay, well, we swear in.
Well, wait, hang on. Is there any other member of the public wishing to speak at this point? Mr. Chairman,
I'm gonna
close.
close public session.
Oh.
Oh. Whoa. Come on up.
Now we're 31, 32.
Sir, if you raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last and your address, please?
Mayor Waxman. My last name is Waxman.
You have to speak closer to the microphone.
Waxman, Mayor Waxman, Waxman. I live on 967 East Veterans Highway.
Go ahead, tell us what you'd like.
So I'll be brief and thank you for your time. And the concerns of the previous two people are I think valid, but and the safety issue is certainly with the parking, we all respect that, and that's a very, very important. However, I would say that first off, there's a big difference between during the week when we in this community can hardly put together a quorum or a minion, as it's called, and make an effort to all be there during the week. With 35 cars, I just don't see it practically in the near future that it would be that many cars. However, during the week, on Saturday, that is more probable. But that's just my personal experience.
All right, thank you.
All right, but in other words, I do support the application. I think it will be beneficial for the community and my fellow neighbors.
Go ahead, come on up.
Do you solemnly, sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm that testimony, information, questions, or comments about the raise before the board will represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Kind of give us your full name, spell your last, and your address.
Peter Kitay, Kitay. I do not live in this area. I live on the other side of town on County Line Road,
Okay, what's the address, though?
513 North County Line Road. I just wanted to bring to the board's attention, I don't know if they're aware, there was a place of worship very similar to this in size that was across from where the Wawa and the shopping center is right now. That closed down. That used to be for the farmers for the area. That closed down years ago.
Why don't you describe where that, so you're talking down Hope Chapel Road?
Hope Chapel and
Near Cap-
528.
Near Cap's Corner?
Yes, right behind, no, I'm sorry, behind Willie's Corner.
Willie's.
It was two houses behind Willie's Corner. So that was, these were all small little temples throughout the town. There were 2 or 3 of them, I believe, that I recall. Most people aren't even aware of that anymore. So this is not uncommon to have small houses of worship like that. I do agree that the parking is an issue. And if they can open up the front area, give them more of a stone area for non-pervious to allow them to park off the street and require signage along Whitesville Road that absolutely no parking is allowed, I think that would try to satisfy both people.
Thank you for coming forward. It's good for them to go back and do homework, all right?
Thank you.
All right, so that's it now. I gotta close it. It's 1:45. I'm gonna bring the
All right, so,
principal up.
just for members of the public session is closed this evening. You will have the opportunity to have further comment when the application is completed.
I have an issue that has been here. We keep coming back, residents of Johnson Lane, it was 6 acres here. Every meeting, we've had 5 meetings, yet we never get to speak. What is wrong?
I open
Sir.
it up to the public.
Sir, first of all, you have to come to the mic. If you. We didn't see you, obviously.
My name is James Rapp, once again, 49 Johnson Lane, Jackson, New Jersey, 08527.
And you're sworn, correct?
I am sworn to tell the truth, yes. Yeah, we keep coming back to the meeting. We keep calling the business administrator. I understand. I heard some reference to the lot and block that we're all here for, which is negatively impacting our neighborhood. We continually meet with our neighbors on the street, sharing our concerns and turning out to the meeting as we were instructed to by the business administrator.
Which application are you talking about now? This is a different.
This is a different one, but when you walked
Sir,
out, when you walked out of the room tonight, to go into closed session, the applicant's name and the lot and block was mentioned that you were going to go discuss it. That's why we're here.
On this application.
No, not on this application, but yeah, the executive session. We're here about Johnson Lane. We're Johnson Lane
Sir,
residents.
hold on, time out. So you were here a couple weeks ago for the Johnson Lane application when you were told that they withdrew their application, which means there is no application.
That's correct.
So there's nothing for us to talk about.
There sure is.
Not here, sir. Sir, there's no application on Johnson Lane. There's no proposed project on Johnson.
We understand that.
So there's nothing to talk about. There's no pending application for us to talk about.
What we're here to talk about is because you're not only the secretary from the business administrator, Terrence Wall, but the, what's her name? The secretary over here, Dawn, told us this is the place, this is the night to come here and express ourselves about the rezoning from limited commercial that was done, from residential to limited commercial on the lots that we're here for.
So
We were instructed that's why we're here. Well, you were wrapping up the meeting, and you know what? My neighbors are here.
So-
They're gonna ask me, what the hell's going on? Does he know what's going on?
Unfortunately, it sounds like you either got bad information or you misconstrued information that was given to you. This is not this is not the board. This is not the time or the place for your concerns of along Johnson Lane. There are no applications in front of any board right now for that property.
Let me ask
So
for the
there's no
record.
reason, unless you want to be here for applications that you're hearing now, there's no other reason for you to be here unless you want to participate in the public process with current pending applications, not hypothetical applications in the future.
I heard you. Can you hang on one second, please, and just let me
there's
find my
no-
notes?
No.
Did you discuss the Schwimmer application tonight? Okay, very good. Thank you.
We closed public portion. It'll be reopened again. The applicant reserved the right just for the applicant's representative to come address some of the issues for the public until they come the next
Why
time.
don't we swear him in?
Sir, thank you for raising your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony, information, questions, or comments you're about to present before the board represent the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Can you kindly give us your full name, spell your last, your address, and your affiliation with the applicant, please?
Mordechai Hirsch, last name Hirsch, 26 Whitesville Road, member of the entity and applicant for tonight's application. I would just like to use a few moments in time, I know it's already late, to address a few of the comments, both questions of the board members and some of the witnesses who came to the stand. I believe most of them respectfully, not homework, but would have been addressed and will be addressed by Mr. Borden's testimony that he did not have an opportunity to complete. Nevertheless, I just want to clarify a few items. The dog daycare facility, as per the resolution, allowed for 20 cars coming to and from each day. Our intent, although it is to have a maximum of 35 congregants, sometimes people come together, sometimes people are coming with their wives. It does not mean that there will be 35 cars. In fact, we feel that the traffic will be less than the 20 vehicles that were coming every day during the dog daycare operations. To address one of the witnesses' comments, I just want to make clear, I have no familiarity with any house of worship currently operating on Whitesville Road in Jackson Township. If it does, I am not aware of it, and it has nothing to do with this application. I do also want to point out that there are two mathematical calculations to determining requisite parking for this site. Based on the congregants at 35 people and requiring 1 space per 4 people, that would require only 9 parking spaces. We were conservative and overparked to accommodate the other way to make the mathematical calculation based on the square footage of the assembly room, that being 594 square feet, resulting in a requirement of 12 parking spaces, which we provided as per the requirement of the ordinance. As Mr. Borden pointed out, we do in fact have an additional 6 parking spaces totaling 18. So we are overparked as far as the township's requirement is
Well, you
concerned.
can't respectfully, and we had that discussion, and this is why there is a homework assignment. You can't count those existing parking spaces without requesting the variance.
Correct. We're not requesting a variance for that because it is not required by the ordinance. That is
Okay,
technically
that's-
overflow.
Listen, that's your argument also true.
Well, respectfully, I'm just stating a fact that the ordinance requires either 9 or 12 spaces, which we have provided. The excess is to accommodate anybody's safety concern about overflow parking. There will certainly be no parking on Whitesville Road whatsoever. There is not even a shoulder wide enough to park a vehicle on Whitesville Road on the western portion of Whitesville Road. So it's a moot point.
Well, the moot point is that you have to guarantee us that nobody's going to be parking on that street.
I guarantee it, and it goes without saying, it's impossible to fit a car there.
So the follow-up is, are you willing, as part of your submission to the county, to ask for no parking ordinance out of the county to ensure that there is no parking along?
I believe the correct answer to that, as my counsel would tell me, is that whatever is required of outside agencies will certainly be complied with.
So that may be your counsel's directive. That's not my question.
My answer to your question is there will be no parking on Whitesville Road.
Okay.
If the county wants something in writing or signage, then we will accommodate their request.
So there's one thing you're going to have to keep in mind to satisfy me.
Sure.
As a member of this board, is you're asking for 2 separate uses here. Not just a house of worship. You're asking for 2 separate uses. It'll come to me to make a determination as to whether or not the parking is appropriate for both uses. Now you can segregate the house as one use, and it's allowed X number of spaces, and the house of worship is allowed Y number of spaces. But this is 2 uses on the same piece of property. So you can come to me and say the ordinance requires this. I'm simply telling you that we have a safety issue here that we have to address. And I have to make a determination myself. I'm not talking for the whole board here. I'm talking about me. I'm one vote. That you're going to have to convince me that this entire site plan, as it relates to parking, is appropriate for both uses. That's all.
The site plan identifies both residential parking and parking specifically designated for the house of worship.
This is not 2 separate individual units. This is one piece of property with 2 uses on it. And they are going to be intermingled one way or another. They're going to be connected one way or another.
Indeed.
Maybe not on use, but as far as the use of the property is concerned, it may be because of the parking. What if congregants decide to park on the residential property? You're going to be allowed to do that? You have the right to do that, I guess. You'd have to arrange for that, but I want to know that. I want to know why you would have to put that. That's all. I'm just giving you an issue to consider for me. Nothing, it hasn't been addressed to my satisfaction yet. So we're just telling you what you have to look for. That's all.
Indeed, there are two intertwined uses, two separate principal uses on the same property, as they have been since 1977, as they were reapproved for a second time in 2007. And we're simply coming, because of the change of use.
Sir, if
to-
you want the rabbi, for example, to occupy that residence, that's a different story. But that's what happened. As testimony from witnesses who lived there testified that the owners of the operators of the properties that they got variances for, that single-family residence was associated with that use. Now, the single-family residence is not associated with your use.
That is correct. However, if you refer back to the resolutions of both 1977 and 2007, there was no limitation placed on who shall reside in the residence. And
That
we're
variance
just,
is gone. You're changing it now. You're abandoning it. You're asking for a brand new application.
Respectfully, I think, we wouldn't have made it, they wouldn't have made a big experience in 1977, with the single family home, would have been considered an accessory use. We got a deep variance because they're separate and distinct, but if you want to tie them together, they never would have needed deep variance in 1977, they never would have needed deep variance in 2007, because they're not consistent. I've never seen a canine boarding house accessory to a single family home. It's just not customarily ordinarily incidental. So they need a deep variance because they are not permitted. They are separate and distinct uses. And that's why they were deep variance granted when you had canoeing and deep variance granted when you had canine. Those are not uses that you would think of ordinarily with a single family home. So, yes. But the record speaks for itself.
if I may just add one thought to this conversation, and then I have two more points to address other questions. The prior use that was given a variance in 2007, a dog daycare facility, is not a permitted use within the zone. And nevertheless, at that time, the board did permit the daycare facility with a second principal use on the same property, being the residential home, and again, without a condition of who may live there. We are coming with something that is a conditional permitted use within the zone and simply seeking to ratify or reapprove, if you will, the variance that was given previously, which some may argue is not necessary, even if there's a difference of
I think I
opinion.
made my position clear. If you remove the building, then there's the single-family residence, then there's no problem. If you use that building as a residence for the rabbi, then there's no problem. But you're renting it separately as a separate use. It becomes a business. That's my only
Just to address one or two last points, the intention is for most prospective congregants to be coming from the eastward direction, where you do have sidewalk that goes well beyond the opening, the driveway opening of this property. So that should alleviate a safety concern. And with regards to traffic on the Sunday through Friday days that someone mentioned, the residents who live here are currently inconvenienced to drive to a neighboring township to pray 3 times a day. It's the same people driving on the same roadways. It will not add to any traffic. It will only give them the convenience and accommodation closer to their homes so that it doesn't interfere with the rest of their schedules. But we do not foresee people coming from far and wide. This is a neighborhood benefit and a convenience for the people who are currently living in this part of the town. Thank you.
So just to sum up, Mr. Chairman, first of all, respectfully, sir, you can sit down. I didn't hear, it's up to the board for its own recollection. I didn't hear any testimony specifically talking about that this use, a conditional use in the zone, the primary at least, would actually increase traffic. I think the focus, and again, we're euphemistically calling it a homework assignment. The applicant reserves its right to address those questions and issues as the applicant sees fit. Remains the safety concern and what Mr. Peters, our planner, talks about as pedestrian connectivity. Notwithstanding where people come from, the idea, and Mr. Board, I appreciate it. You indicated that it wasn't a silly question to talk about how to get folks from across the street and across Whitesville Road, because that's just a natural sense. You've heard the board and the public's comments. You certainly heard your applicant's representatives' comments to those. You have a client to represent. The board certainly understands that. You all take it under advisement. I think based on the date, we should move it to that May date also. Oh, so you're carrying this? You're gonna, it's not Mr. Pfeffer any? No, not April 20th. No, we're not. No, because that's during the Passover week. Probably not. We're trying to keep it minimalized anyway. I probably won't be here, and I think this is one that I should be here too. For which? Yeah, I know there's one, but it's. Well, I'm not gonna be, I may not be here. I do. I'm not so sure that this is an application I should have a substitute for. The applicant is available during Kolomoy Pesach?
We've been waiting a year and a half for this.
All right.
Application started June 2020. I would accommodate April 6th if that's your preference, if you want to juggle things.
What do you say, April 6th? We got too many on April 6th, right, Jeff? No.
No, that's up to, well.
Mr. Chairman, for what it's worth, from my perspective, I would like Sean sitting in on this application. And I would like-
Absolutely, and I agree. I don't want to, we want Sean to be here for this. We're not going to give it to another lawyer. It's the 4th. Six bolts.
Just do it. Just.
May 18th.
I'm not here, Nate.
Oh, she's not. That's. Yeah, is Mr.
Pfeffer.
They're switching. School is out that week. Planning board does not have a meeting.
All right, it's 11 o'clock.
What's the day? You want to put them on April 6th to see what happens in case some things fall apart?
Not April. No,
I
they'll
don't know.
never make it.
It's June. No, we have not come up with a date yet.
Mr. Gerber, does it make sense to push this 3 months because of your absence? If the board is here and conducting.
The board wants him here. The board wants.
You know what? We're not going to have that conversation, quite frankly.
May 4th is booked. April 20th.
Well, what applications are on April 4th? I mean, May 4th. Let me see. You know what? And there's 4 bulks that were added too?
We never have time. We won't have time.
No, that's not good.
Everybody's in the same boat, so that's kind of yeah, May 4th has 2 big applications.
June. What's the first June? June 1st, the first Wednesday? Well, let's look at that. We have anything on June? Good, there you go. You can have the whole day.
Yep. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, this matter is being carried to the June 1, 2022 meeting without the requirement of further notice. The applicant is waiving time until June 15, 2022.
All right.
What's the meeting time? What date?
7 o'clock, June
No,
1st.
what date?
June 1.
No, to make Miss Jennings happy, I may not be here.
Oh, my God. Then we can't do it. You're not going golfing, Doug.
I'll be in Ireland.
Ireland. All right, motion to.
And just
adjourn.
real quickly, tonight's Tony Ann's last night. Thank you for your service to the board.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Well, I hope to run into you in Hilton Head.
Yeah.